Mesdames et messieurs, soyez les bienvenus à cette fête d'anniversaire historique, all of which is to gain your attention. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, welcome. I would like to begin before a formal opening by getting the house rules out of the way. First of all, my name is John. I believe that first names are in order for the day. My name is John Sibi Okumu. I happen to be Kenyan, but I see myself as a citizen of the world. And I am a broadcast journalist, a TV presenter, seen on a daily basis by the great majority of Kenyans. And it's my pleasure to moderate and be a gentle guide to today's proceedings. We wish, in the best of all possible worlds, to have ended by 3:30. So I will get kudos. I'll be asked to come again if I can chivvy things along to make that happen. So before the formal opening, house rules. May I allude to the issue of security? Do feel that in this environment, the world is changing rapidly as you read the news, but we are in as secure an emotional space as is possible in the circumstances. The washrooms are out of this building and on either side towards the end, the ladies and the gents. Mobile phones, would you please keep them on silent, because we would like you to take advantage of social media and to be sending messages throughout the world at the following hashtags. One is hashtag Ciat50, predictably, and one is hashtag Pabra20. The last thing that I'd like to urge you to do is to hold on to the stickers that you were given. They were either orange, green, or blue, and this is very much a requirement of the hotel, so that when we go for such things as lunch and we are official in terms of the numbers given to the hotel. So you might hear me repeating that once again nearer the time. And the last thing that I might mention is that this is, after all, a birthday party. And at birthday parties, I try to urge the organizers to lay on a bouncing castle, but they said no, we are going to spend the day reflecting on the 50 and 20 years that have gone past, and then the celebration will come after. But in order to lighten up, to loosen up, and to suggest the general attitude that we should be having throughout the day, it's not stiff upper lip, it's very much décontracté, as the French would say, and the measure of my success is to involve you in the proceedings, to get you to say something, to get you to respond. So please don't let me down when I call upon you to do so. And the very first thing that we could do, just to loosen up, is to give ourselves a big clap for being 50 and 20. It's a milestone. Principal Secretary, Mr. Charles Sunkuli, of the Ministry of the Environment and Natural Resources, Dr. Ruben Echeverria, Director General of Ciat, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Ciat 50 and Pabra 20 celebrations, bringing together more than partners from more than 30 countries across our African continent, under the generic theme, Building Resilience for a Sustainable Food Future in Africa. And to set the tone of our celebrations, why not see a very short 6-minute video highlighting the achievements of the last 50 and 20 years of those two institutions, respectively. Thank you very much for your time. We could have a little clap. Oh, gosh. I've been practicing that all night.
Growing beans, mainly the new varieties, the income from my family has increased, and I'm able to pay school for my children. The family has something to eat.
As farmers, we have found that a 2 kg packet of the older varieties were producing about 20 kgs, but these new varieties, they are producing up to a bag of 90 kg.
One key challenge facing agriculture in Africa is low productivity. At Ciat, we're working to ensure that we increase productivity and competitiveness for farmers. While doing this, we also want to reduce the negative impact of agriculture on the environment. Our vision is to see a more robust, more competitive agricultural sector, private sector driven, with more farmers who are the private sector, by the way, all farmers both at the smallholder level and large-scale commercial, all thriving. That's the big picture, to see African agriculture or Africans able to feed themselves, but also play a part in the global food system.
Soil research is important because it gives us ideas or limelights on how to intervene in managing the soils itself so that we can improve on our soil productivity. Soil research brings in interventions that can reverse that degradation so that we can actually increase our yields to satisfy the needs of the increasing population. The common yields production is between 0.5 to 1 ton per acre. Now, imagine this is supposed to feed a farmer, a household, let's say 6 families, 6 people in a household. Now, half a ton cannot last even 2-3 months within a season. So this farmer has to get some external support in order to make ends meet. Now, with research, if we can intervene, we have the potential of increasing from 0.5 tons to 6 tons. Under good conditions, 6 tons is possible.
First, I grow beans as a source of income. Again, I grow beans as a source of maintaining food security in my house.
Wakati wa kiangazi, chakula ya ng'ombe inakuwa na shida kwa sababu unaenda bali kutafuta ile majani uko naye, saa zingine imeisha, ikiisha nyeupe imekauka, nyasi imekauka, hata kupatikana kwa hii inakuwa shida. Sasa tunaenda bali sana kutafuta nyasi.
Drought has brought a significant challenge to the farmers because most of the farmers have been using conventional forages and foders, and these ones were not bred to withstand continuous or persistent dry spans. So the farmers hardly have enough and they are really challenged. There is a need to have improved varieties that can withstand or have resilient capacity to survive in the drier areas.
As you know, it takes about 3 hours to cook beans. It takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of fuel, and more importantly, it takes a lot of women's time because it's women who are mainly engaged in cooking beans. So the Pre-Cooked Beans project is a partnership between research to basically take beans and develop them into a product that's available in the market that cooks for 10 to 15 minutes. So basically it's reducing the cooking time of beans from 3 hours to about 10 to 15 minutes. We know that one of the strategies to get to scale is through the private sector. And in Africa, we are seeing an emergence of private sector playing this role of actually getting products to consumers. They sort of are looking, they call it the triple bottom line, that they want profits, but they also want to have a social impact of their work.
Pan-African Bean Research Alliance is really a partnership that links researchers from the basic research to the end user. The common bean is managed and stored by Ciat in a gene bank.
Now we are working on a seed system where we would want the new varieties, the seeds, to have them available at close to the destinations where the farmers can buy them from agro shops. And to address the issue of seeds further, what we are doing, instead of having these seeds being imported outside Africa, we are exploring through digital mapping areas where that would have potential to produce the seeds. And so far we know those conditions do exist in countries like Zambia, Malawi and Zimbabwe. The question at the moment is how do we go and make it happen? And at the moment we are involving stakeholders, and especially the funders, and there are signs that we could get funding and be able to pin down the seed production in Africa and for Africa.
Hello. Oh, that's me. Ladies and gentlemen, just to remind you, if you look at your bag here, and you'll see amongst the things in your little bag something that says Ciat 50 celebrations. It'll allow you to be able to read the program that I'm reading, and we'll give you some finer details about what's going to be happening next. So just to remind you that we have a hashtag, 2 hashtags, hashtag Ciat50, hashtag Pabra20. And now, moving on nicely, it's my great pleasure to introduce a gentleman who did me the honor of appearing on my TV show last time he was in town. So we met 5 years ago, and I tried to grill him, as we sort of hard-talk journalists are meant to do, but he wouldn't. The man was not for grilling. He was far too sharp and smart. Ladies and gentlemen, the Director General of Ciat, Dr. Ruben Echeverria.
Thank you, John. I don't know if I am as sharp as he believes I am, but anyway, we'll try again. So, thank you very much. Welcome to the Ciat 50 celebration, the Pabra 20 celebration. Dr. Charles Unkuli, Principal Secretary of Environment and Natural Resources of Kenya. It's a pleasure to have you here. Dr. Jeff Hotting, my board chair, and one of my several bosses from the Ciat board. A pleasure to travel all the way to Nairobi to celebrate with Ciat this fantastic journey in Africa. Our development partners, I see many here, Rockefeller Foundation, Canada, African Development Bank, and many more that we will be interacting during the morning and part of the afternoon. My friends and colleagues and the people who really work at Ciat, which is not me, the people who organize all of this for months and months of hard work, I really thank all my team for putting all of this together. Ciat Africa is a fantastic team, and they've done a great job. I really thank, as a Latin American, the Kenyan government for hosting Ciat for 40 years. So we are celebrating 40 years of Ciat in Africa, 50 years of when Ciat was born. But we cannot, we all need a home, and we cannot have a strong Ciat in Africa as we are now without having a great place to live. So our headquarters in Africa being here in Nairobi. Charles, on behalf of all Ciat and the development partners sitting here, thank you very much to your government. Hopefully there will be another 40 years. Looking forward for more success. I have a few slides. I will be very short, so I'm supposed to warm up the audience for what's coming in the program, so I promise I will be very short. If I point that way, perhaps. So we are celebrating 50 years of great success, 40 years of Ciat partnerships in Africa. It's all about partnerships, of course. Ciat is a small center. We cannot do it alone. It happens because we have great funding, sustainable funding, and also great partnership to do research for development. So everything started with 11 men in black, and I won't go too much on this, but this is the first Ciat board, and in 1967, where the Rockefeller Foundation, I'm really happy to have here Rafael Flor representing the mighty Rockefeller Foundation, and the Colombian government, and we have here the son of one of the Ciat creators, Christian Samper, which both are in the picture, Ulysses Grant and Armando. Somebody had a great vision in the mid-60s when already two very important centers of the family of the CGR were created, the Rice Center and the Wheat and Maize Center. Somebody thought commodities are not enough. These fantastic cereals are very important, but they're not enough. So a few years later, they created two centers, IITA and Ciat, with a systems framework, a system mindset. The vision that they had, it has been fantastic, a fantastic journey in 50 years. So we thank to them, the Rockefeller, and all the Ford Foundation, USAID, and many more that at that time had that vision to create Ciat with $250,000 in 1966. So many things happen, and we don't have time to go to 50 years, but there is a fantastic timeline in your National Geographic size Ciat annual report, where you can see all the details of many things that happens since the creation in 67. This is kind of far away from the screens, but you can see it there. We were born in 67 in Palmira, Colombia, a great place at 900 meters above sea level, with soils and climate conditions that whatever you do there could be really had a great spillover in the tropics. And a few other highlights. After that, the CGR was born. The CGR is the family of the 15 international centers, so we feel as one of the founding members of the CGR. A few other things. We started 10 years later. Ciat was created as a regional center, but a few years later, very few, everybody thought this is a great idea, why not being global? So we've been working in Africa for 40 years and in Asia for about the same time, 35 to 40 years. In the 90s, in addition to the crops, Ciat moved into sustainable environment, soils, natural resource management, and many great things. So it took about 15 to 20 years to move on that way. To add to that to our portfolio, in the late 90s is the creation of PABRA that we are celebrating, the 20 years of PABRA. So half of our life in Africa has been thanks to one of the great impacts of the CGR in Africa, which is the Pan-African Bean Research Alliance, which is coordinated. Ciat has a lot to do on Phaseolus beans, but it's not Ciat. It's a huge partnership of about 30 countries. Many great things happened there, so I will go very, very quick. On the early 2000s, Ciat started to really think on climate. We are now leading a climate change program in the CGR. Late in the 2008, we promoted the idea. We had 3 collections in gene banks to really safeguard all of that for humanity forever with the creation of the Global Crop Trust. A few other things happened in that mid-2000s, which is, for example, the creation of Harvest Plus, one of the fantastic flagships in the CGR. If you are looking for impact, talk with Beverly Postma sitting there on the white. So she's the CEO of Harvest Plus. Harvest Plus is all about the CGR. Ciat is one of the founding members of Harvest Plus, and this is all about the iron beans that we talk about here. Also, we have, in 2013, a new way of thinking on public goods, spillovers, research findings, the open access kind of mentality in the CGR. I think we were quite active on that front. We're working on the new Agenda 2030 and so on. So you can see the rest of all of that. And now, very recently, we have been promoting the creation of this big data platform in the CGR. So all of that timeline to say that we have been, I think I have a few more slides, we have been quite creative, revolutionary in the good sense of the word, doing new things. We are quite excited, and we would love to do, although 50 years is midlife, but we like to keep that energy for the next 50 years, to really keep pushing the CGR and say, why are we doing that, and so what, and what's the impact? So Ciat has been always in that pushing to innovate, not alone, but with many partners. So today Ciat has 1,000 people, we 2,050 researchers, 50 countries, about 21 offices, and you can see they are far away, but there is a map in your brochures. I'm sure that you can see where we are. This is kind of a good summary of the journey from a very small-hoarded focus on bean and cassava program in the early beginnings to a low input, what we call eco-efficiency at Ciat. So we don't claim to have invented sustainable intensification, but Ciat played for the last 30 years a major role in that low-input eco-efficiency agriculture, which is very important for smallholder family farming. The early work on linking farmers to market, which now is very popular. All of that linking, thinking about markets. We can have a lot of great varieties, but if there are no markets, nobody will benefit. So thinking about all of that linking, Ciat has been a pioneer. The farmer participatory research approach, the gender participatory, all of these things that were born at Ciat a long time ago, some of them, and a commitment to capacity development. Next week, I'm missing a big party in Colombia because somebody with a great idea at Ciat headquarters in Colombia thought, why don't we get together the Colombians who've been around Ciat for 50 years? Perhaps we can get 20 or 30 of them and so on. You know how many signed up? 450. June 9, there will be a huge encounter at headquarters, a big party to remember what happened. So it has been a tradition in Colombia of so many locals being trained and connected to Ciat. So big commitment there. In the 90s, Pabra, you will see Pabra in the menu, is coming in the program, so I won't delve too much on that one. At the same time, a similar Pabra, but for rice, was created in Latin America. So Ciat has some tradition on creating these platforms, particularly with the private sector, to really seek adoption of what we are doing at research. All our research is for impact. It's all research for development. So we try to say, well, there could be fantastic science, but if it's not improving incomes, then it won't matter much for us. So just to give you an idea on the bean adoption, very proud on this one. After many years of hard work on research on beans, about half of the bean area in Africa is Ciat germplasm-related improved varieties, so this is quite a success. If we could keep improving those markets, and if we have better MOUs with the private sector, with the seed companies and so on, hopefully this will continue to go up. And you can see there some more details in the countries where our improved varieties have penetrated more than in others. So on the integrated natural resource, Ciat loves beans, but we have much more than beans. I keep joking with that, and with Robin and all the bean friends here, we have about 12 programs at Ciat, and yes, the impact here has been on beans, basically, but we hope that forages will do the same in the future, and soils, and climate, and so on. So I will show a few of other things not related so only to beans. For example, we have friends here from IITA. I don't know where Kwesi is, my friend, Professor Kwesi. There you are. Thank you for coming. All the humid tropics, the Sub-Saharan Africa Challenge Program, all of that thinking on the systems that IIT and CIA have shared for so long, hopefully we can continue to do that in some way in some of the CGR programs. So thank you for that partnership. Very recently, we are talking about climate change, adaptation, and mitigation, and thanks to good support, there has been quite a bit from the World Bank in this case, but it could be from any other potential partner in the future. These climate-smart agricultural profiles are selling like hotcakes. And I'm joking, say selling because they are not for sale. Of course, they are free. But you know, we all talk about climate change, but for those busy managers preparing loans or projects, where is the brief, all you wanted to know in 20 pages? What are the best practices on climate? Who do you go with to work where to have an impact? So anyway, that's happening. There's a major loan from the World Bank in Kenya based on some of this research, and we're really proud for the climate change. Evan, I see Evan, your team and the rest of the Ciat team who has worked in all of this. I think it's just the beginning of a major, major portfolio of work. Because whatever we do has to be related with the suitability because of the climate change and so on. And in addition to having country profiles, we are now having county profiles, like in Kenya. So things happen at national level, but more importantly is, okay, what do I do in the next 2 weeks? Oh, by the way, we also brought the rains. Did you notice it's raining today? So I hope it doesn't happen only every 50 years. So for the future, I see Jimmy Smith, my colleague who has suffered with me in the trenches of the CGR. Thanks for coming, Jimmy. Director General of ILRI, a fantastic center based right here in Nairobi and in Addis and working all over, where we share the common interest on working on forages, livestock development. Very important. And this is just to whet your appetite, we can discuss. There may not be a lot of livestock, and there may be other challenges in those maps. But what you see green there is just the potential suitability of one Brachyria and one Panicum. So a lot of way ahead for Ciat and forages in Africa, I hope. And just to finish, this is the roadmap 2020. So we are going to be discussing this during the day. 4 key themes we think, and we hear from partners that we should be doing in Africa in the near future, in the next 3 to 4 years, which is continue to work on markets, leverage those markets to improve productivity and competitivity. We are not going to forget the productivity and the competitivity and our core science, of course, but we need to add nutrition, and we've been doing that successfully, particularly here in Africa for the last 10 years or so. So Ciat, if you look at our mission, is quite a bit of nutrition and health, connecting that to agriculture, improving soils, from the good old TSBF onwards. Here has been a major splash on soil research for development in Africa and elsewhere. So that's a key cornerstone of our roadmap. And finally, climate smart. So those are the 4 key topics that we're going to be discussing during the program, and we look forward to get quite a bit of contribution and donor support to get that research on the road in the next few years. So with that, I thank you very much. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much indeed.
I did okay, John. Otherwise, John will never invite me again. He's the one inviting me.
Thank you very much indeed. May I invite, since this is the phone is playing up, May I invite Dr. Sarah Menke, CEO and founder of Grow Intelligence and a member of the Ciat Board of Trustees.
Good morning, everyone. So my job is to talk about the 4 themes around Ciat's roadmap for Africa. But before doing that, I wanted to spend some time contextualizing what's going on the continent and some of the challenges in the agricultural sector in general, and then kind of dive into what opportunities Ciat presents. So essentially, the African continent has been undergoing transformation on an economic basis, which has presented a lot of agricultural opportunities. However, it isn't without environmental challenges. And these are what the 4 themes are built on. So the African growth story, and I have growth in quotations because when you look at GDP growth on a per capita basis, the last few years have actually been relatively difficult for a lot of African countries on a per capita basis. So there has been growth, but the growth has actually not been as steady as most perceive. It is the second most populous continent in the world. So if you look at this tree map, maybe it's not so clear, but Africa is the red portion. So this is scaled according to size. Blue is Asia. However, it's still 4th in global cereal consumption. So again, the red, it's not as high up as it was. However, hunger has been declining. So 17 countries in sub-Saharan Africa have succeeded in having the number of hungry people in their countries since 2000. This is in 2015. 4 more are on track to do so by 2020. Food deficits have been declining, and the consumption of fatty oils, for example, has been rapidly increasing. And I use Ethiopia as an example here, but essentially this image really applies for any African country that you actually pick. You have rising protein demand. And what this is actually looking at is essentially poultry consumption relative to population growth. And you essentially see a very, it's one way, it's quite linear, and it's growing rapidly. And one of the things, when thinking about data and capturing information around some of these trends, that we realized is things like poultry consumption, which are reported through some sources, are actually quite lagging. So the best data you can find is really 2013, 2014. But things like palm oil consumption we can find up to today. And they tend to be really good proxies because they're associated with protein demand because they're fatty oils to be used in food, etc. There's also been a rapid growth in the fast-moving consumer goods markets. So as of 2014, global retail sales of packaged foods was estimated at $2.4 trillion. That figure is expected to rise to $3 trillion by 2020. The big driver has been emerging markets, and largely it's been South America, Sub-Saharan Africa, and Southeast Asia. So between 2001 and 2015, the value of imported foods in these economies has tripled. So there are challenges ahead. There's a lack of diversity in the foods consumed and produced. So in order to sustain global food demand by 2050, agricultural production needs to increase by 70%, including an additional 1 billion metric tons of cereals. Approximately 70% of the world's food comes from just 12 crops and 5 animal species. It's been disrupted by climate change. And this is actually where gene banks come in handy, because gene banks can help address these threats to food security. The work that Ciat is doing around the gene banks is actually quite critical to meeting some of these challenges that we have coming ahead of us. So we talk about gene banks, now we move into R&D on the continent. Africa lags tremendously on agricultural R&D. So if you look at research and development budgets as a percentage of total GDP, high-income countries have about 2 to 3%. Sub-Saharan Africa, sorry, that's agriculture as a percentage of total GDP. So it's only 2 to 3% of agriculture as a percentage of GDP. For Africa, for Sub-Saharan Africa, that's 26%. However, in terms of allocation of budget, Sub-Saharan Africa is actually only 0.6% of annual budgets are dedicated to agricultural R&D. Higher education for agriculture on the continent is also lacking. So Sub-Saharan African countries spend on average $12.7 million each year on higher education, agricultural research and development. That is very, very low. It's 213 million in Brazil, 482 million in China, 735 million in India. And in India, 86% of public agricultural research staff have PhDs, compared to just 29% in Sub-Saharan Africa. There is a massive research challenge ahead of the continent. However, elsewhere, also, ag faces a problem. So this is in the US. It was a study that was commissioned by the USDA that Purdue did. And the question was essentially, how many average annual openings in the ag space, job openings, would there be between 2015 and 2020? That number came to about 57,800. And how many new graduates based off majors, et cetera, listed would qualify for these jobs? Only 35,400. So about a third of jobs would essentially actually be left open. There is the farmer problem. So demographic-wise, this is the census on farm operators in the US, and it's basically looking at age groups of farmers. The yellow is 65 plus. If you see what's happened in the last census, which is 2012, that number is rapidly increasing. 2017 census will be out this year, so it'll be interesting to see kind of how that progresses. This is actually a challenge that's faced globally and is quite universal. So therefore, the role of automating some of these tasks, the role of big data, et cetera, actually become quite critical in addressing these challenges. However, it's not all dark. The private sector has actually invested quite a lot in global agriculture. So looking at private sector investments, between 2006 and 2010, basically new funds raised an average of $1.24 billion a year to invest in agriculture. The same figure more than doubled for 2011 to 2015. And looking at what are these investments going into, especially in the ag tech space, that breakdown essentially gives you a sense of where dollars are going. Irrigation and water, drones and robotics, soil and crop technology, sustainable protein, indoor agriculture, urban agriculture. So how does the question around public-private collaboration actually, the space for that is right because private dollars are actually flowing into the industry. So the 4 themes we discussed: leveraging markets for improved productivity and competitiveness, linking agriculture to nutrition for healthier diets, healthy soils, and climate-resilient agriculture. Africa's lack of dairy. So if we think about dairy as kind of one of the critical consumed products, New Zealand, a country of 4.4 million people, exported $11 billion worth of dairy product. Only 2 African countries actually registered a positive dairy trade balance. That was Uganda for $21 million and South Africa for $128 million. Everybody else is either net flat, actually net importing. So $3.5 billion of dairy products are imported onto the continent. So global deficiencies in productivity. So this is where Forage's research and the Gene Bank comes into play. In America or Europe, 75 to 300 kilograms of hay and other dry matter equals 1 kilogram of meat. In Africa, that's about 500 kilograms. And then when you go to Ethiopia, Sudan, and Somalia, it's up to 2,000 kilograms. This is directly, obviously, linked to greenhouse gases as well. Now, when thinking about markets, there are things that are beyond the control of research and actually have to do with policy, and these are associated with trade. So Africa as a region has some of the most variable and highest import and export handling fees these have direct impacts for markets, because no matter what you tackle, without tackling some of these issues, you essentially end up in a struggle. So costs in Mauritius are about $100 per container compared with $1,000 in Cote d'Ivoire. Handling fees in the US can be as low as $50. The cost of shipping. Shipping a ton of fertilizer, 9,000 kilometers from the US to coastal Kenya, costs $40 a ton. To now take that by truck from Mombasa to Uganda costs $120. It's only 1,000 kilometers. These challenges need to be addressed, because without addressing some of these trade challenges, it's really hard to actually tackle some of the productivity issues. So linking agriculture to nutrition. This is actually on antibiotic use and the rise of antibiotic use globally. But the misuse of antibiotics in animal production can increase the prevalence of antibiotic-resistant bacteria, which has the potential to infect humans. And this is obviously industrial farming related, and expectations are that global incomes will continue to rise and demand for meat will follow, encouraging an expansion of industrial farming operations. This could actually lead to an increase in global usage of antibiotics in animal production of 67%. So therefore, the question here is, what are the substitutes? Healthy soils and landscapes. This is associated kind of backward looking to greenhouse gases and the dairy conversation as well. But essentially, more livestock, more emissions, degradation of soil, etc. The story continues. Climate resilient agriculture. Climate and agricultural yields. So just thinking of just on a macro level. Climate scientists anticipate that climate change will alter regional weather patterns. And one estimate cited by the World Bank suggests that for some countries, climate change may lead to an increase in yields for several major cereals, tubers, legumes, and oilseeds by 2050, while other countries might see a steep decline. Now, when you start to see the breakdown of which countries will benefit versus not, Africa is actually at a disproportionate disadvantage. And so watching the breakdown and understanding patterns kind of on a national, subnational level is actually quite critical. So think of La Niña, and this is just an economic analysis of La Niña's economic impact. So it has a greater impact, tends to have a greater impact on global economy than El Niño. And 21 La Niña years have caused an annual average of $77 billion in global weather catastrophe losses. That's since 1950, while 22 El Niño years have caused an average loss of about $45 billion. Flooding events tend to be the largest contributors to economic losses. So therefore, thinking about how do you mitigate these risks and how do we reduce these dollars at risk actually becomes critical. So essentially what I've tried to do is just cover these 4 topics at a high level, leave you guys to think a little further about it, and that's it.
May I invite Dr. Debisa Araba, Ciat Regional Director for Africa.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Now, as you can see, I've got a prepared speech. Don't be alarmed. It's because I want to make sure I capture the spirit of why we're here this morning. Can we cue this? Okay, thank you very much. Now, by a show of hands, could you let me know if you've ever worked with Ciat or supervised by a Ciat scientist? If you've ever had any professional interaction with Ciat, please just a show of hands. Amazing, amazing. Now on to the formal start of my speech. Hamjambo. Honorable Permanent Secretary, State Department of Environment, Mr. Charles Sunkuli, Dr. Jeff Houghton, my boss's boss, the chair of the Board of Trustees of Ciat, my boss, the big chief, Dr. Ruben Echeverria, Director General, Ciat. CGIAR Directors General present. I see Dr. Jimmy Smith of ILRI here. Development partners, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Now, Isaac Newton famously stated that if I have seen further, it's because I've stood on the shoulders of giants. Now, for those of you who may not know, I think this is really my welcoming to the Africa, should we say the world stage. I am Yoruba, and I'm Nigerian. Now, in my language, we have a saying, Owe Leshioro, or Leshin Owe. Bi Oroba Sonu, Owe Lafenwa. Now, what that means, if I parse it in English, it means proverbs are we ride words on proverbs, and vice versa. In situations where we are lost for words, we find the meaning or the context of meaning within proverbs. So I'm someone who likes to use a lot of proverbs from my cultural background, so bear with me. Now, working to improve health and nutrition while increasing productivity and reducing the negative impacts of agriculture on the environment requires a lot of patience, skill, and yes, a bit of luck. Our success depends on the breadth and depth of partnerships and coalitions of the willing we're able to forge, as accurately placed by Ruben and Sarah. Now, upon our founding in October 1967, and within a very short period, it was agreed that the knowledge and expertise of Ciat could and should be extended to benefit the agriculture sector across the tropics, across the whole world, and should not be limited to South America alone. Now, this signaling of our willingness to break new boundaries and forge partnerships helped to help others on their road to covering the last mile and to achieving prosperity is hard-coded in our DNA as an institution. Ciat has a rich history of innovative science and research in development for impact. Permit me to share with you this morning recent breakthroughs we've achieved in reducing climate risks for smallholder rice farmers in Colombia. What we did, the team, the DAPA team, ably led by Andy Jarvis, who's here somewhere in this room. He's the guy with the suit without a tie. Now, the team at DAPA worked on improving the decisions, the planting decisions of rice farmers, saving $3 million in planting costs in the first season alone. Now, that's the spirit of excellence that Ciat imbibes. Now, some of you might ask, so why is this relevant to Africa? But as I told you earlier, we're a global institution. And so what we do is we apply knowledge and best practices acquired anywhere to other areas where we operate. Now, in the spirit of this global mandate, we've taken the use of big data and machine learning analytics, first deployed in South America, to offer an innovative support to reduce the cyclical food and malnutrition crises experienced in parts of Africa. Today, you will hear about the Nutrition Early Warning System, an approach which will utilize big data analysis techniques and machine learning algorithms to improve decision making, both for the public and private sectors. That will help us move away from the reactive to proactive responses to crises, fostering true resilience in the agriculture and food systems across Africa. This news aligns firmly with our rich tradition of global impact, capacity building, and cross-regional learning. In maintaining this heritage, Ciat now leads the big data, the CGIAR big data platform. In Africa, we have aligned our work within 4 thematic areas, as Ruben mentioned earlier. And these thematic areas focused on improving nutrition pathways for health, building resilience into the food system, restoring degraded land, and strengthening the competitiveness and productivity of farmers, as well as efficient access to markets. This all begins with the cradle of life, the soil. We may not say this often enough, but I think as long as I have this platform to speak about it, I want to re-emphasize, ladies and gentlemen, that it may not sound sexy or hip. But then again, we at Ciat are not in a fashion contest, unless, of course, you're Andy Jarvis. If you think about our work as a system of delivering improved health and nutrition, while building resilience to shocks and stresses, which could prevent increased productivity and income, then you must recognize that without healthy soils, we're not going anywhere. In Africa, about 65% of arable land and 30% of grazing land is degraded. We mustn't take our eyes off the ball. Our groundbreaking research in soil health and fertility management have identified critical reasons for the low adoption of fertilizers. We have a tool called Evaluating Land Management Options, ELMO. Now, what ELMO allows us to do is to pinpoint, through direct participatory engagement with farmers, what keeps them from adopting mineral fertilizer. One such success story is in Tanzania, where in 1974, agriculture extension agents visited the Babati district in the northern region. Farmers were advised to apply ammonium phosphate to the soils. A farmer called Gabriel Leonce, who you see on the screen, I hope that's Gabriel, yes it is, recalls that the ammonium phosphate burnt the leaves of their maize crop. And the yield was lower than the previous yield before they started using the inputs. Now, this built a very strong internal resistance to the adoption of fertilizer. But now we know, of course, that ammonium phosphate increased soil acidity in Babati. Now, through our work with SARI, that's the Salient Agriculture Research Institute in Tanzania, and the farmers in Babati, we've been very patient with the farmers and we've worked with them. They've been very open to our participatory approach. We've helped them to test the suitability of different fertilizers on their maize crop, based on the soil profile in that region. And we have since been able to get the farmers to improve productivity and also begin to adopt the use of fertilizer. It's a slow and steady progress, but progress is being made. Now, in collaboration with partners, Ciat has developed climate-smart agriculture profiles, both at the national and subnational level. The profiles give us a snapshot of the exposure to shocks and stresses across different value chains, making us understand what adaptation options farmers currently are practicing, and where the best options, alternative options, or additional options are available. Now, in Kenya, we have been able to take this further, to downscale it, and increase the resolution of our advisories through the development of county-level climate-smart agriculture profiles in 31 counties across Kenya. And this is already supporting the work the World Bank funded Kenyan government climate-smart agriculture work to improve productivity and build resilience in the agriculture sector. Honorable Permanent Secretary, I am pleased to inform you that Kenya is the first country in the whole world to have such a comprehensive decision and investment support tool at the subnational level, which will support its efforts to ensure that Kenya's farmers can remain productive in the face of climate change. Kenya leads, and other countries will follow. We will soon expand this into a climate policy hub, as you will hear later today, a one-stop shop for advisory services and research for impact, building on successful models from our work started in Asia. Our work on improving nutrition pathways for health has led us to deeper knowledge and improved intervention support. These efforts are built on the shoulders of giants, one of which is on the screen right now. A scientist by the name of Steve Beebe. Steve came up with the word biofortification, which a few of you are quite familiar with now. The process through which we naturally increase the contents of micronutrients in crops through conventional breeding methods. This has radically transformed the global effort to tackle malnutrition, especially for pregnant women and children in the first 1,000 days of their lives after birth. Through innovations such as the Nutrition Early Warning System, we are going beyond crop breeding to understand and improve pathways for healthier and more diverse diets and improve nutrition. Our work in Rwanda and Malawi shows that the food to health via nutrition pathway isn't always linear, and there are social issues which we must address in this effort. Now, as we celebrate the 20th anniversary of the Pan-African Bean Research Alliance today, I cannot emphasize enough the power of partnerships. I know it's been said a lot in the previous speeches, but I really want to emphasize it. We need these partnerships to scale up the success of our interventions and market penetration, which will usher in the transformation of Africa's agriculture. Our goal to make agriculture competitive and highly productive will not happen without the active participation of the private sector right across the value chain. My colleague and dear friend, Robin Buruchara, the man you see in that corner, has done an outstanding work in creating a broad-based, multi-sectoral, truly pan-African network of partners focused on increasing productivity, increasing efficiency of markets, coordinating research, and scaling up the adoption of improved varieties desired by consumers. PABRA, ladies and gentlemen, is the global standard of what a true public-private partnership for scaling up agriculture transformation should look like. PABRA has built an organic network which currently connects 570 partners across 30 countries in Africa, all focused on maximizing the benefit of beans. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a confession. One confession this morning. I love beans. I can't get enough of them. But when I thought I was the biggest fan of beans in the world, as Susan will attest, I encountered the farmers and residents of Pitamanda village in Zimba district of Malawi. Now, let's go back 6 years ago to 2011. There was a particular variety called Nua 45, iron-rich beans. It was distributed to farmers in Pitamanda village under the Savings Market Agriculture for Rural Transformation Program, SMART. Now, prior to this, the farmers were quite food insecure and barely made any income from the reed mats and axes they used to sell. 18 kilograms of seed was distributed to the farmers, and they multiplied this over the rainy season and planted under irrigation the following season. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to announce today that during the 2016-2017 planting season, the village has already harvested 10 tons of beans with a market value of $11,000. To put this in context, this money has allowed them invest in building brick houses, investing in solar power, purchasing more advanced farming technologies and inputs, and then providing the financing for them to afford to buy more seed and improved seed varieties and also fertilizer. A remarkable transformation has happened in Pitamanda village in just over 5 years. In the words of the residents of the village, they say, "We are not poor anymore. You, Ciat, call this bean variety Nua 45. We call it capital." We have also developed a similar partnership for scaling up the adoption of animal forages in Africa based on the PABRA model. The forages market, ladies and gentlemen, is a $600 million business in South America. The use of improved forages, originally from Africa, transformed the economic opportunities for farmers in South America. We are focused on reintroducing these improved varieties for these forage grasses back into Africa to support the livestock and dairy industries and also to connect farmers with the prosperity already experienced in South America. It's a picture of some of our collections at the Ciat headquarters in Colombia. Now, these forages are special in their qualities. They have the capabilities of sequestering carbon in the soil due to their deep roots. And because they're easily digestible, they reduce the methane emission from livestock. And also, of course, they improve the production of milk, meaning the farmers who adopt the use of these improved forages get more money, access to more money. African countries are experiencing population expansion on a massive scale, as Sarah showed you. These growth rates imply an increase in demand for food, as well as jobs. I suppose as government or government representatives in this room, you would appreciate the pressure to create the enabling environment to stimulate the creation of jobs. Agriculture is going to play a major role in addressing both issues. As we join our partners in increasing productivity and market opportunities, we aim to position agriculture as a major player of labor, an employer of labor across value chains across the continent, from on-farm production to processing, marketing, and distribution. And as we increase productivity, we will create pathways for countries to increase their food security, build their resilience to shocks and stresses, and also create employment opportunities for millions. Now, my family moved to the city of Lagos in Nigeria 3 generations ago. My paternal grandfather made a successful business as a commodity trader. He ensured that his children were educated and ready to contribute to and benefit from the opportunities newly independent Nigeria provided. So for those who are familiar with macroeconomics or economics in Africa in the 1980s with the structural adjustment programs, etc., there was an economic downturn. And Nigeria experienced a sharp one in the 80s when I grew up. You didn't grow up in Lagos in the 1980s and didn't experience poverty, regardless of which socioeconomic strata your family belonged to. It was harsh. It permeated the very fabric of society, to the extent that the music of that period stands as a historic marker of the difficult times people lived in. Facing such daunting circumstances, I personally decided early in my life that I wouldn't ignore the realities. I wasn't going to flee. I was going to improve the quality of life of people through science. Little did I know that I would be joining Ciat. Seeing firsthand how lives can be transformed in the span of a few farming seasons, how farmers are willing to invest in agriculture if given the opportunity to do so. It confirms to me that agriculture is powerful. No other sector has the potential to address such a wide range of challenges like poverty, employment, nutrition, gender equality, and sustainability. Yes, farming in Africa is complex, as I said earlier, but it's possible to put pieces of this puzzle together and create a beautiful picture. What you will see are farmers generating a healthy harvest, gaining access to a market that will pay a decent price for their produce, investing a portion of their profits back into their farms, and then using the success to steadily improve their access to credit, inputs, irrigation, and high-quality seed. Now, at Ciat, for the last 30 years in Africa and 50 years globally, we've been working with a large coalition of partners to improve food security. We have learned key lessons about important challenges, like how to develop healthier soils, build food systems that deliver nutritious foods, and make healthier diets for people around Africa. We have made great progress, but there's still much for us to do. As Ruben said earlier in his speech, Ciat is just one institution. We do not have all the answers. We do not claim to. But we are part of a network that is called the CGIAR. It's the largest and most productive network of agriculture scientists and crop gene banks the world has ever seen. We collectively have access to the world's largest collections of vital staple crops. We have the expertise and technology to tap into this diversity to breed new, improved crop varieties and make them accessible to poor farmers. The CGIAR is committed to make agriculture more profitable, sustainable, and resilient to future challenges. My vision is that farmers like those in Peter Manda village can help create an agriculture sector that offers economic opportunities across all aspects of production, storage, processing, transportation, and sale of food. This is what we call the agriculture value chain. And making it stronger means agriculture can become more attractive to our most talented entrepreneurs and not seen as a career of last resort that it's often today. The infusion of youth can help bring new innovations to agriculture. Just as we have embraced mobile technology, Africans can also become leaders in agriculture technology. In the future, I want to see farmers working their land with the assistance of aerial drones and automated tractors. The Internet of Things will play an increasingly pivotal role in boosting productivity and improving efficiency across the value chain. They will be monitoring their crops on their phones through a steady stream of updates. Through big data and machine learning, they will get site-specific insights and advice on future outbreaks of pests and diseases affecting the growing season. Farmers will be connected to live auction sites where all parties maximize mutual gains and profit. If you seek out some of my colleagues in the room here today, they'll tell you the future is already here. We just need to take these things to scale. Farmers will be able to afford to educate their children, who will choose whatever path, career path they wish, within agriculture or otherwise. And as I said earlier, agriculture will no longer be seen as a last resort of the poor. it will be a vibrant business sector flooded with private capital. That's my vision. At some point, we need to stop looking at Africa's food challenges as overwhelming and unsolvable. It was Voltaire who said, "No problem can withstand the assault of sustained thinking." This is why we are partners with you on Progress for Africa's Agriculture. We need to stand up and say, these are problems that can be solved in our lifetime, and we can work together to make immediate progress. Transforming Africa's agriculture is possible. We have seen the green shoots of hope, and these anchors serve to spur us on. Now's the time to take things to scale. Now, my good friend Callistus Juma, a son of Kenya, a famous son of Kenya, for some of you in the room who might know him, professor of the practice of international development at the Harvard Kennedy School, said, when it comes to science and research, agriculture tends to be treated as the younger sister of industry. We readily accept the place of MBA and PhD training in industry, yet we're happy to live with primary education for farmers when it comes to agriculture. The reality is that agriculture is more complex than manufacturing. Urgent measures are needed to create a new generation of highly educated farmers and scientists in the developing world who can do for agriculture in the 21st century what physicists and engineers did for industry in the developed world in the 20th century. Now, his words mirror my sentiments for an increased and persistent investment in agriculture research for impact. For those of you in the room whose job it is to fund research and development in agriculture, I tell you, we need those investments now more than ever. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope this is your vision too. We live at a time of enormous challenges, but also enormous opportunity. I look forward to working together to ensure that we embrace the opportunities in agriculture, and we look forward to the benefits over the next 50 years with Ciat. It is my hope that after today's meeting, you will have a renewed appreciation for the complexities in which we operate. But it's not an investment without rewards, as I've shown you earlier. For our partners across the entire agriculture value chain, from research through processing and marketing, who are in this room, we're willing to commit to the hard work ahead. I assure you that Ciat is fit for purpose. We are robust in our thinking, design, and implementation of interventions to support the transformation of agriculture sector. Now, you might ask me, why am I repeating a lot of these stories and anecdotes? See, we tell these stories to remind ourselves and also inform you of who we are. And it's to reinforce our values of innovation and excellence. I assure you that we have the able shoulders of Ciat for you to stand on, and an ever-ready partner to foster an eco-efficient future for Africa's agriculture. And together, we will not just see further, we will boldly chart a glorious future for Africa's agriculture. Asante sana.
Ladies and gentlemen, reference has been made to the fact that it is Kenya that has hosted Ciat for the last 40 years. And therefore, it's very opportune that we should have a spokesman from the Kenyan government. I'm going to introduce another of my friends. Given our new constitution here in Kenya, the term to use properly is no longer permanent secretary, but principal secretary, I do believe. And the principal secretaries under our new constitution are meant to guide ministers, and they themselves are true technocrats. In other words, they're meant to know what they're talking about. They're not just sort of political appointees. So this gentleman has been in the area of environment and agriculture for the last 20 years. And before he was appointed principal secretary, he worked from 2010 to 2015 as the CEO of a parastatal committed to the environment and agriculture. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure to introduce Mr. Charles Sunkuli, Principal Secretary, Minister of the Environment and Natural Resources.
can imagine CB Okumu introducing someone. It's quite elaborate. First of all, I'm happy that we are celebrating the 50 years of Ciat and 20 years of PABRA at a time when we've just come from a long drought in Kenya that has affected food security. So celebrating 50 years, of course, is a good coincidence for us here in Kenya. And we look forward, of course, that some of the innovations that come out of this conference, of these celebrations, are going to feed into our ongoing strategies that are being put in place by the government of Kenya. The Ciat Regional Director for Africa, Sarah Menga, CEO and founder of GRO Intelligence, Dr. Richard Cheveria, Director General Ciat, the chairperson of the board, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, good morning. I'm going to make a speech on behalf of the Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Environment and Natural Resources, Professor Judy Wahungu, who had wished to be here but had an urgent assignment within the Cabinet meeting today. I feel most honored for the invitation to join you this morning for this important occasion to celebrate 50 years of the International Center for Tropical Agriculture, Ciat. This meeting is very important for us as a country and as a region because the issues at hand affect us directly and impact on the overall performance of our economy. As you are aware, Kenya has been gripped by prolonged drought, which has left about 2.7 million people in dire need for food. Malnutrition is on the rise, and in this turn would have great impacts on future generations, since malnutrition leads to stunting and loss of educational opportunities for our young people. As we expect to experience more intense weather extremes like drought in future, it is vital that we build resilience within our communities and within our ecosystems and environment to be able to cope with challenges in the future. Today we look forward to hearing how research can contribute towards making our environment more resilient to the impact of climate change, soil erosion, and decline in ecosystem health. Ladies and gentlemen, we look forward to hearing how researchers are building resilience within communities, especially by helping to ensure that our food systems can deliver more nutritious food to reach people when they need it, where they need it, at an affordable price. More importantly, we hear about the valuable contribution that research can play in guiding our decision-making processes. For example, the Nutrition Early Warning System News white paper published today by the International Center for Tropical Agriculture, Ciat, outlines an approach towards tracking malnutrition in Africa, processing large volumes of information and data to detect early signs of food shortages or drought. Further, we will hear about the importance of making higher quality brachiaria grasses available to livestock farmers, which can help livestock farmers increase milk yields by up to 40% depending on management. This is good for consumer diets and improving income for farmers. Ladies and gentlemen, we will hear how Ciat is working with our national partners to achieve food security by growing crops that are better suited to higher temperatures or longer periods of drought. In this direction, for example, in 2015-2016, a total of US $0.5 million investment in dissemination of improved bean varieties has generated more than $3 million in total seed revenue. bringing on an average an extra 15 kilos of improved beans for 147,000 farmers. This earned more than $2 million extra for farmers in Rwanda, Burundi, and Kenya. Through the Pan-African Bean Research Alliance, which Ciat facilitates, 27 million farmers have been reached with improved bean varieties across 30 countries in Africa. Closer home, through the Nairobi Water Fund, Ciat with the Nature Conservancy is partnering with local organizations to implement sustainable land management practices, SLM. The sustainable land management practice, which is being implemented in the Upper Tana River Basin, which supplies 90% of Nairobi's water, is critical to the city of Nairobi. Through this collaboration, Ciat, which has been in Africa for 35 years, will help secure clean water and power for people and businesses in Nairobi and improve food security for farmers in the basin whose livelihood depend on sustainable management of natural resources. With the foregoing in mind, we need to work together with the Global Consultative Group for International Agriculture Research, CGR, community research organization of which Ciat is one member, to ensure our farmers can plan their harvest in advance and improve food security and income generation while beating environmental challenges. As I conclude, ladies and gentlemen, and as we prepare to celebrate the World Environment Day next week, 5th of June, I would like to encourage the distinguished members attending this event to connect with nature. Kenya welcomes you with open arms to experience the magic and beauty of our dear country. Karibuni, and congratulations, Ciat, for 50 years, and congratulations, Barbara, for 20 years. Thank you very much.
Now, as a moderator, I've got the first of my truly challenging managerial constructs, is the word I'll use, and that is to effortlessly engineer a cake cutting ceremony. We're going to have 2 cakes, and perhaps first of all they might emerge as rehearsed at 2 o'clock yesterday morning. Now, the understanding is that the 2 cakes should come into a sort of central locking system around here, with a little space for people to stand behind them, with a view to having their picture taken cutting the cakes. So, 1 cake says Habra 20 on my left, and 1 cake says Ciat 50. There we go. Right, now we have to create a little space so that people can come behind them. First of all, now the time, Principal Secretary, if you'd be so kind, Ruben, if you'd be so kind, Bisa, if you'd be so kind. Right, would you put yourselves behind Ciat 50? I don't know. Maybe, and then just hold on. But don't forget, I spent 30 years of my life as a school teacher. Ruben is there. Now we want to have Ruben and Co is there. Now we want to have Robin. And Robin is going to be joined by a representative from the partners in the person of Mr. Stanley Nkalubo, and also by a representative of the donor community, by the Deputy High Commissioner of Canada, Ms. Joanne Minns. Everything is going swimmingly at this stage, and maybe in the interest of ceremony, perhaps, Sammy, just go easy on the music. Sammy, go easy on the music, we'll get really excited soon. Word or two.
Yeah, 20 years. 21st is the key one, but 20 years of celebration. Thankful to partners and donors who's made all this happen. Thank you.
Now, you've got 2 cakes between you. Robin, if you'd be so kind as to hold a knife. Robin, a knife. And the rest of you would sort of put your hands lovingly around the knife. And the same thing over there. It's the PS, right? And there we go. And this is it. Now, music. Right, thank you very much. I was going to invite you to dance a little jig, but I may be a bit forward. Thank you very much. Right, could we lower the music, please? I have a few more announcements to make. So that is the symbolic cutting of the cake. Now, this is another shared with you that I've spent 28 years of my life precisely to be as a high school teacher of French. So I'm very familiar with organizing groups of young people, and it always turns out that it's easier to organize groups of adults. So this is your big moment. We're going to have a group photograph, and the group photograph is going to occur downstairs at the entrance to the hotel. So the big challenge is to get 130 people down a flight of stairs without people sort of detouring and going off and having a little chat and exchanging phone numbers. So we're going to give ourselves 5 minutes, and we've got 2 possibilities to do that. You came in through a funnel to my right for registration purposes, but you're well aware that the hotel has got lifts of its own. So we've got 2 options. We can return to the funnels, or we can go down the lift. And to me, Charles, please stay for the photograph, please. That was a sort of gentle request to the PS to join us. Right, 6 minutes, 30 seconds. After that, you then have to hot-foot it up the lift to come back and have a cup of coffee. Right? During that time, 3 people who know themselves have to first of all head off to a press conference in the room next door, in the partition next door. And everybody has to be back here by 11:30. And if all this goes according to plan, my fee is going to be doubled. 6 minutes, 30 seconds. So first of all, please, quickly, faster, matatu time. Let's go down and have everybody in a group photograph comprising 130 people. Thank you. Patrick, how's it going for you?
Thank you. You're doing very well.
Thank you. They're very...
how to intervene in managing the soils itself so that we can improve soil productivity, soil research, brings in interventions that can reverse the condition so that we can increase the rates to satisfy the needs of the population. The yields production is between 0.5 from 0.5 tons to 6 tons. Under good conditions, 6 tons is possible.
First, I grow beans as a source of income. Again, I grow beans as a source of maintaining food security in my house.
Wakati wa kiangazi chakula ya ng'ombe inakuwa na shida, kwa sababu unaenda bali kutafuta ile majani uko naye, saa zingine imeisha, ikiisha miti imekauka, nyasi imekauka, hata kupatikana kwa hii inakuwa shida. Sasa tunaenda bali sana kutafuta nyasi.
Drought has brought a significant challenge to the farmers, because most of the farmers have been using conventional forages and foders, and these ones were not bred to withstand continuous or persistent dry spans. So the farmers hardly have enough, and they are really challenged. There is a need to have improved varieties that can withstand or have resilient capacity to survive in the dry areas.
As you know, it takes about 3 hours to cook beans. It takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of fuel, and more importantly, it takes a lot of women's time, because it's women who are mainly engaged in cooking beans. So the Pre-Cooked Beans project is a partnership between research organizations and a private sector company to basically take beans and develop them into a product that's available in the market that cooks for 10 to 15 minutes. So basically, it's reducing the cooking time of beans from 3 hours to about 10 to 15 minutes. We know that one of the strategies to get to scale is through the private sector. And in Africa, we are seeing an emergence of private sector playing this role of actually getting products to consumers. They sort of are looking, they call it the triple bottom line, that they want profits, but they also want to have a social impact of their work.
The African Bean Research Alliance is really a partnership that links researchers from the basic research to the end user. The common bean is managed and stored by Ciat in a gene bank.
Now we are working on a seed system where we would want the new varieties, the seeds, to have them available at close to the destinations where the farmers can buy them from agro shops. And to address the issue of seeds further, what we are doing, instead of having these seeds being imported outside Africa, we are exploring through digital mapping areas where that would have potential to produce the seeds. And so far we know those conditions do exist in countries like Zambia, Malawi, and Zimbabwe. The question at the moment is how do we go and make it happen? And at the moment we are involving stakeholders, and especially the funders, and there are signs that we could get funding and be able to pin down the seed production in Africa and for Africa.
Growing beans, mainly the new varieties, the income from my family has increased, and I'm able to pay school for my children. The family has something to eat.
As farmers, we have found that a 2 kg packet of the older varieties were producing about 20 kgs. But these new varieties, they are producing up to a bag of 90 kg.
One key challenge facing agriculture in Africa is low productivity. And at Ciat, we're working to ensure that we increase productivity and competitiveness for farmers. While doing this, we also want to reduce the negative impact of agriculture on the environment. Our vision is to see a more robust, more competitive agricultural sector, private sector driven, with more farmers who are the private sector, by the way, all farmers both at the smallholder level and large-scale commercial, all thriving. That's the big picture, to see African agriculture or Africans able to feed themselves, but also play a part in the global food system.
Soil research is important because it gives us ideas or limelights on how to intervene in managing the soils itself so that we can improve on our soil productivity. Soil research brings in interventions that can reverse that degradation so that we can actually increase our yields to satisfy the needs of the increasing population. The common yields production is between 0.5 to 1 ton per acre. Now imagine this is supposed to feed a farmer, a household, let's say 6 families, 6 people in a household. Now half a ton cannot last even 2-3 months within a season. So this farmer has to get some external support in order to make ends meet. Now with research, if we can intervene, we have the potential of increasing from 0.5 tons to 6 tons. Under good conditions, 6 tons is possible.
First, I grow beans as a source of income. Again, I grow beans as a source of maintaining food security in my house.
Na wakati wa kiangazi chakula ya ng'ombe inakuwa na shida, kwa sababu unaenda bali kutafuta ile majani uko naye, saa zingine imeisha, ikiisha miti imekauka, nyasi imekauka, hata kupatikana kwa hii inakuwa shida. Sasa tunaenda bali sana kutafuta nyasi.
Drought has brought a significant challenge to the farmers because most of the farmers have been using conventional forages and foders, and these ones were not bred to withstand continuous or persistent dry spans. So the farmers hardly have enough and they are really challenged. There is a need to have improved varieties that can withstand or have resilient capacity to survive in the drier areas.
As you know, it takes about 3 hours to cook beans. It takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of fuel, and more importantly, it takes a lot of women's time because it's women who are mainly engaged in cooking beans. So the Pre-Cooked Beans Project is a partnership between research organizations and a private sector company to basically take beans and develop them into a product that's available in the market that cooks for 10 to 15 minutes. So basically, it's reducing the cooking time of beans from 3 hours to about 10 to 15 minutes. We know that one of the strategies to get to scale is through the private sector. And in Africa, we are seeing an emergence of private sector playing this role of actually getting products to consumers. They sort of are looking, they call it the triple bottom line, that they want profits, but they also want to have a social impact of their work.
The African Bean Research Alliance is really a partnership that links researchers from the basic research to the end user. The common bean is managed and stored by Ciat in a gene bank.
Now we are working on a seed system where we would want the new varieties, they are seeds to have them available at close to the destinations where the farmers can buy them from agro shops. And to address the issue of seeds further, what we are doing, instead of having these seeds being imported outside Africa, we are exploring through digital mapping areas where that would have potential to produce the seeds. And so far we know those conditions do exist in countries like Zambia, Malawi and Zimbabwe. The question at the moment is how do we go and make it happen? And at the moment we are involving stakeholders and especially the funders, and there are signs that we could get funding and be able to pin down the seed production in Africa and for Africa.
Growing beans, mainly the new varieties, the income from my family has increased, and I'm able to pay school for my children. The family has something to eat.
As farmers, we have found that a 2 kg packet of the older varieties were producing about 20 kgs. But these new varieties, they are producing up to a bag of 90 kg.
One key challenge facing agriculture in Africa is low productivity. At Ciat, we're working to ensure that we increase productivity and competitiveness for farmers. While doing this, we also want to reduce the negative impact of agriculture on the environment. Our vision is to see a more robust, more competitive agricultural sector, private sector driven, with more farmers who are the private sector, by the way, all farmers both at the smallholder level and large-scale commercial, all thriving. That's the big picture, to see African agriculture or Africans able to feed themselves, but also play a part in the global food system.
Soil research is important because it gives us ideas or limelights on how to intervene in managing the soils itself so that we can improve on our soil productivity. Soil research brings in interventions that can reverse that degradation so that we can actually increase our yields to satisfy the needs of the increasing population. The common yields production is between 0.5 to 1 ton per acre. Now imagine this is supposed to feed a farmer, a household, let's say 6 families, 6 people in a household. Now, half a ton cannot last even 2-3 months within a season. So this farmer has to get some external support in order to make ends meet. Now, with research, if we can intervene, we have the potential of increasing from 0.5 tons to 6 tons. Under good conditions, 6 tons is possible.
1, 2, sound check.
First, I grow beans as a source of income. Again, I grow beans as a source of maintaining food security in my house.
Na wakati wa kiangazi chakula ya ng'ombe inakuwa na shida, kwa sababu unaenda bali kutafuta ile majani uko naye, saa zingine imeisha, ikiisha miti imekauka, nyasi imekauka, hata kupatikana kwa hii inakuwa shida. Sasa tunaenda bali sana kutafuta nyasi.
Drought has brought a significant charge to the farmers, because most of the farmers have been using conventional forages and fodders, and these ones were not bred to withstand continuous or persistent dry spans. So the farmers hardly have enough, and they are really challenged. There is a need to have improved varieties that can withstand or have resilient capacity to survive in the drier areas.
As you know, it takes about 3 hours to cook beans. It takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of fuel, and more importantly, it takes a lot of women's time, because it's women who are mainly engaged in cooking beans. So the Pre-Cooked Beans project is a partnership between research organizations and a private sector company to basically take beans and develop them into a product that's available in the market that cooks for 10 to 15 minutes. So basically, it's reducing the cooking time of beans from 3 hours to about 10 to 15 minutes. We know that one of the strategies to get to scale is through the private sector. And in Africa, we are seeing an emergence of private sector playing this role of actually getting products to consumers. They sort of are looking, they call it the triple bottom line, that they want profits, but they also want to have a social impact of their work.
Pan-African Bean Research Alliance is really a partnership that links researchers from the basic research to the end user. The common bean is managed and stored by Ciat in a gene bank.
Now we are working on a seed system where we would want the new varieties, the seeds, to have them available at close to the destinations where the farmers can buy them from agro shops. And to address the issue of seeds further, what we are doing, instead of having these seeds being imported outside Africa, we are exploring through digital mapping areas where that would have potential to produce the seeds. And so far we know those conditions do exist in countries like Zambia, Malawi and Zimbabwe. The question at the moment is, how do we go and make it happen? And at the moment we are involving stakeholders, and especially the funders, and there are signs that we could get funding and be able to pin down the seed production in Africa and for Africa.
growing beans, mainly the new varieties, the income from my family has increased, and I'm able to pay school for my children. The family has something to eat. As farmers, we have found that a 2 kg packet of the older varieties were producing about 20 kgs. But these new varieties, they are producing up to a bag of 90 kg.
One key challenge facing agriculture in Africa is low productivity. And at Ciat, we're working to ensure that we increase productivity and competitiveness for farmers. While doing this, we also want to reduce the negative impact of agriculture on the environment. Our vision is to see a more robust, more competitive agricultural sector, private sector driven, with more farmers who are the private sector, by the way, all farmers both at the smallholder level and large-scale commercial, all thriving. That's the big picture, to see African agriculture or Africans able to feed themselves, but also play a part in the global food system.
Soil research is important because it gives us ideas or limelights on how to intervene in managing the soils itself so that we can improve on our soil productivity. Soil research brings in interventions that can reverse that degradation so that we can actually increase our yields to satisfy the needs of the increasing population. The common yields production is between 0.5 to 1 ton per acre. Now imagine this is supposed to feed a farmer, a household, let's say 6 families, 6 people in a household. Now half a ton cannot last even 2-3 months within a season. So this farmer has to get some external support in order to make ends meet. Now with research, if we can intervene, we have the potential of increasing from 0.5 tons to 6 tons. Under good conditions, 6 tons is possible.
First, I grow beans as a source of income. Again, I grow beans as a source of maintaining food security in my house.
Na wakati wa kiangazi chakula ya ng'ombe inakuwa na shida, kwa sababu unaenda bali kutafuta ile majani uko naye, saa zingine imeisha, ikiisha nyasi imekauka, nyasi imekauka, hata kupatikana kwa hii inakuwa shida. Sasa tunaenda bali sana kutafuta nyasi.
Drought has brought a significant challenge to the farmers because most of the farmers have been using conventional forages and foders, and these ones were not bred to withstand continuous or persistent dry spans. So the farmers hardly have enough and they are really challenged. There is a need to have improved varieties that can withstand or have resilient capacity to survive in the drier areas.
As you know, it takes about 3 hours to cook beans. It takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of fuel, and more importantly, it takes a lot of women's time because it's women who are mainly engaged in cooking beans. So the Pre-Cooked Beans project is a partnership between research organizations and a private sector company to basically take beans and develop them into a product that's available in the market that cooks for 10 to 15 minutes. So basically it's reducing the cooking time of beans from 3 hours to about 10 to 15 minutes. We know that one of the strategies to get to scale is through the private sector. And in Africa, we are seeing an emergence of private sector playing this role of actually getting products to consumers. They sort of are looking, they call it the triple bottom line, that they want profits, but they also want to have a social impact of their work.
The African Bean Research Alliance is really a partnership that links researchers from the basic research to the end user. The common bean is managed and stored by Ciat in a gene bank.
Now we are working on a seed system where we would want the new varieties, the seeds to have them available at close to the destinations where the farmers can buy them from agro shops. And to address the issue of seeds further, what we are doing, instead of having these seeds being imported outside Africa, we are exploring through digital mapping areas where that would have potential to produce the seeds. And so far we know those conditions do exist in countries like Zambia, Malawi and Zimbabwe. The question at the moment is how do we go and make it happen? And at the moment we are involving stakeholders, and especially the funders, and there are signs that we could get funding and be able to pin down the seed production in Africa and for Africa.
Growing beans, mainly the new varieties, the income from my family has increased, and I'm able to pay school for my children. The family has something to eat.
As farmers, we have found that a 2 kg packet of the older varieties were producing about 20 kgs. But these new varieties, they are producing up to a bag of 90 kg.
One key challenge facing agriculture in Africa is low productivity. At Ciat, we're working to ensure that we increase productivity and competitiveness for farmers. While doing this, we also want to reduce the negative impact of agriculture on the environment. Our vision is to see a more robust, more competitive agricultural sector, private sector driven, with more farmers who are the private sector, by the way, all farmers both at the smallholder level and large-scale commercial, all thriving. That's the big picture, to see African agriculture or Africans able to feed themselves, but also play a part in the global food system.
Soil research is important because it gives us ideas or limelights on how to intervene in managing the soils itself so that we can improve on our soil productivity. Soil research brings in interventions that can reverse that degradation so that we can actually increase our yields to satisfy the needs of the increasing population. The common yields production is between 0.5 to 1 ton per acre. Now imagine this is supposed to feed a farmer, a household, let's say 6 families, 6 people in a household. Now half a ton cannot last even 2-3 months within a season. So this farmer has to get some external support in order to make ends meet. Now with research, if we can intervene, we have the potential of increasing from 0.5 tons to 6 tons. Under good conditions, 6 tons is possible.
First, I grow beans as a source of income. Again, I grow beans as a source of maintaining food security in my house.
Na wakati wa kiangazi chakula ya ng'ombe inakuwa na shida, kwa sababu unaenda bali kutafuta ile majani uko naye, saa zingine imeisha, ikiisha miti imekauka, nyasi imekauka, hata kupatikana kwa hii inakuwa shida. Sasa tunaenda bali sana kutafuta nyasi.
Drought has brought a significant challenge to the farmers because most of the farmers have been using conventional forages and foders, and these ones were not bred to withstand continuous or persistent dry spans. So the farmers hardly have enough. and they are really challenged. There is a need to have improved varieties that can withstand or have resilient capacity to survive in the drier areas.
As you know, it takes about 3 hours to cook beans. It takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of fuel, and more importantly, it takes a lot of women's time because it's women who are mainly engaged in cooking beans. So the Pre-Cooked Beans project is a partnership between research organizations and a private sector company to basically take beans and develop them into a product that's available in the market that cooks for 10 to 15 minutes. So basically, it's reducing the cooking time of beans from 3 hours to about 10 to 15 minutes. We know that one of the strategies to get to scale is through the private sector. And in Africa, we are seeing an emergence of private sector playing this role of actually getting products to consumers. They sort of are looking, they call it the triple bottom line, that they want profits, but they also want to have a social impact of their work.
Pan-African Bean Research Alliance is really a partnership that links researchers from the basic research to the end user. The common bean is managed and stored by Ciat in a gene bank.
Now we are working on a seed system where we would want the new varieties, the seeds to have them available at close to the destinations where the farmers can buy them from agro shops. And to address the issue of seeds further, what we are doing, instead of having these seeds being imported outside Africa, we are exploring through digital mapping areas where that would have potential to produce the seeds. And so far we know those conditions do exist in countries like Zambia, Malawi and Zimbabwe. The question at the moment is how do we go and make it happen? And at the moment we are involving stakeholders, and especially the funders, and there are signs that we could get funding and be able to pin down the seed production in Africa and for Africa.
Growing beans, mainly the new varieties, the income from my family has increased, and I'm able to pay school for my children. The family has something to eat.
As farmers, we have found that a 2 kg packet of the older varieties were producing about 20 kgs. But these new varieties, they are producing up to a bag of 90 kg.
One key challenge facing agriculture in Africa is low productivity. At Ciat, we're working to ensure that we increase productivity and competitiveness for farmers. While doing this, we also want to reduce the negative impact of agriculture on the environment. Our vision is to see a more robust, more competitive agricultural sector, private sector driven, with more farmers, who are the private sector, by the way, all farmers both at the smallholder level and large-scale commercial, all thriving. That's the big picture, to see African agriculture or Africans able to feed themselves, but also play a part in the global food system.
Soil research is important because it gives us ideas or limelights on how to intervene in managing the soils itself so that we can improve on our soil productivity. Soil research brings in interventions that can reverse that degradation so that we can actually increase our yields to satisfy the needs of the increasing population. The common yields production is between 0.5 to 1 ton per acre. Now, imagine this is supposed to feed a farmer, a household, let's say 6 families, 6 people in a household. Now, half a ton cannot last even 2-3 months within a season. So this farmer has to get some external support in order to make ends meet. Now, with research, if we can intervene, we have the potential of increasing from 0.5 tons to 6 tons. Under good conditions, 6 tons is possible.
First, I grow beans as a source of income. Again, I grow beans as a source of maintaining food security in my house.
Na wakati wa kiangazi chakula ya ng'ombe inakuwa na shida, kwa sababu unaenda bali kutafuta ile majani uko naye, saa zingine imeisha, ikiisha miti imekauka, nyasi imekauka, hata kupatikana kwa hii inakuwa shida. Sasa tunaenda bali sana kutafuta nyasi.
Drought has brought a significant challenge to the farmers because most of the farmers have been using conventional forages and fodders, and these ones were not bred to withstand continuous or persistent dry spans. So the farmers hardly have enough and they are really challenged. There is a need to have improved varieties that can withstand or have resilient capacity to survive in the dry areas.
As you know, it takes about 3 hours to cook beans. It takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of fuel, and more importantly, it takes a lot of women's time because it's women who are mainly engaged in cooking beans. So the Pre-Cooked Beans Project is a partnership between research organizations and a private sector company to basically take beans and develop them into a product that's available in the market that cooks for 10 to 15 minutes. So basically, it's reducing the cooking time of beans from 3 hours to about 10 to 15 minutes. We know that one of the strategies to get to scale is through the private sector. And in Africa, we are seeing an emergence of private sector playing this role of actually getting products to consumers. They sort of are looking, they call it the triple bottom line, that they want profits, but they also want to have a social impact of their work.
The African Bean Research Alliance is really a partnership that links researchers from the basic research to the end user. The common bean is managed and stored by Ciat in a gene bank.
Now we are working on a seed system where we would want the new varieties, the seeds to have them available at close to the destinations where the farmers can buy them from agro shops. And to address the issue of seeds further, what we are doing, instead of having these seeds being imported outside Africa, we are exploring through digital mapping areas where that would have potential to produce the seeds. And so far we know those conditions do exist in countries like Zambia, Malawi and Zimbabwe. The question at the moment is how do we go and make it happen? And at the moment we are involving stakeholders, and especially the funders, and there are signs that we could get funding and be able to pin down the seed production in Africa and for Africa.
growing beans, mainly the new varieties, the income from my family has increased. And I'm able to pay school for my children. The family has something to eat.
As farmers, we have found that a 2 kg packet of the older varieties were producing about 20 kgs. But these new varieties, they are producing up to a bag of 90 kg.
One key challenge facing agriculture in Africa is low productivity. At Ciat, we're working to ensure that we increase productivity and competitiveness for farmers. While doing this, we also want to reduce the negative impact of agriculture on the environment. Our vision is to see a more robust, more competitive agricultural sector, private sector driven, with more farmers who are the private sector, by the way, all farmers both at the smallholder level and large-scale commercial, all thriving. That's the big picture, to see African agriculture or Africans able to feed themselves, but also play a part in the global food system.
Soil research is important because it gives us ideas or limelights on how to intervene in managing the soils itself so that we can improve on our soil productivity. Soil research brings in interventions that can reverse that degradation so that we can actually increase our yields to satisfy the needs of the increasing population. The common yields production is between 0.5 to 1 ton per acre. Now, imagine this is supposed to feed a farmer, a household, let's say 6 families, 6 people in a household. Now, half a ton cannot last even 2-3 months within a season. So this farmer has to get some external support in order to make ends meet. Now, with research, if we can intervene, we have the potential of increasing from 0.5 tons to 6 tons. Under good conditions, 6 tons is possible.
First, I grow beans as a source of income. Again, I grow beans as a source of maintaining food security in my house.
Na wakati wa kiangazi chakula ya ng'ombe inakuwa na shida, kwa sababu unaenda bali kutafuta ile majani uko naye, saa zingine imeisha, ikiisha miti imekauka, nyasi imekauka, hata kupatikana kwa hii inakuwa shida. Sasa tunaenda bali sana kutafuta nyasi.
Drought has brought a significant charge to the farmers because most of the farmers have been using conventional forages and foders, and these ones were not bred to withstand continuous or persistent dry spans. So the farmers hardly have enough and they are really challenged. There is a need to have improved varieties that can withstand or have resilient capacity to survive in the drier areas.
As you know, it takes about 3 hours to cook beans. It takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of fuel, and more importantly, it takes a lot of women's time because it's women who are mainly engaged in cooking beans. So the Pre-Cooked Beans project is a partnership between research organizations and a private sector company to basically take beans and develop them into a product that's available in the market that cooks for 10 to 15 minutes. So basically, it's reducing the cooking time of beans from 3 hours to about 10 to 15 minutes. We know that one of the strategies to get to scale is through the private sector. And in Africa, we are seeing an
Hello? Ladies and gentlemen, onward, onward. I think I would be highly obliged if the members of my panel would come and sit down. Gladys Mugambi, is she here? Gladys Mugambi. Gladys Mugambi, Rachel Njeri. Next, Gladys, please. Wonderful. Sit there. Just so that I can remember from where you are what your name is. Simple as that. Olufunsho. Somarin might join us soon. Agnes Kalibata. Is Agnes here? Sorry, we're interested, we're still waiting for Olu to come. Social media, we must declare what we're doing to the world at large. Your phones are on, as I remember it. Please, if you're on Twitter, activate your Twitter machine, and remember that our hashtags are hashtag Ciat50, hashtag Pabra20, and follow proceedings on Twitter and participate in them. We're still waiting for Olu. Sorry, it's 11:30 according to my watch. I'll introduce the other panelist when he comes. There's Olu, just in time, dramatic entrance. Give him a clap. So there he is. It's always good to get a clap, sort of energizer. Ladies and gentlemen, not to cast aspersions on what has gone before, I think maybe the meat of our day begins now, because we've had the formal official speeches. Let's encourage a climate of debate and discussion. So if you read alongside with me, we are going to have the first of two panel discussions where one individual will set us off, and thereafter we shall have a little chat. Now, if Sammy will oblige, I think this is our panel, and right here at the far end, I am talking to Gladys Mugambi, and it says Head of Nutrition and Dietetics Unit, Ministry of Health, Kenya. And after Gladys, we have a panelist who has chosen to give her interventions in Kiswahili. And this will give me an opportunity to translate, interpret for her. If she uses some buzzwords from the jargon world of agriculture and the environment, which I can't understand, I have already primed my brothers from Tanzania, who told me what the word for soil erosion is, and just in case she comes out with it, and they will leap to my defense, and together we shall cope. lakini dadangu Rachel Njeri anatoka Gatanga huko Murang'a, ambao kuna muziki safi ambao tunachezea muogedhi kutoka huko Gatanga, but sasa yuko hapa kama mkulima. Next to Rachel, we have Olufunsho Somorin, Senior Policy Officer, Fragility and Resilience Unit, East Africa, but I'm going to stick to of the African Development Bank. After that, we have Agnes. Agnes Kalibata is President of the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa, shortened to AGRA on a clear day. But our discussion is going to be set off by Mercy Lungaho, who is a Ciat nutritionist. So, the thing is, we've got some homework for you to do, folks. As you listen to these people, think of some wise guy question to ask them.
Thank you, John. If you see in your packages, you have this beautiful report that tells our stories. On page 22 is my story, and that's what I want to share with you today. I am passionate about working in nutrition. Anybody who knows me will tell you that Mercy is passionate about nutrition. I do what I do because I know what it feels like when people look the other way. You see, I was born at 32 weeks, a premature baby, just a kilo, anemic. Doctors gave me 72 hours to live, but I'm still here. Against all odds, I survived, and now I want to be part of the solution. As a nutritionist, I cannot look the other way while women and children in Africa die of anemia and malnutrition. Yet, when I visit communities to teach about malnutrition, I feel ill-equipped. Sometimes the people I talk to have not eaten certain foods like meat for months. How can I convince these people that the food system I'm talking about is something they can trust? A food system that does not work for them. They cannot get what they need to have a healthy diet at prices they can afford when they need them. The food system now simply does not work for a majority of people in Africa. But I am positive. I know that we can fix this. We need to remember the people we are working for and make sure they don't fall through the cracks. People like a lady I remember vividly, I met in Rwanda at a tea estate in Rulindo. My team and I were on our way to visit a local community to assess nutrition indicators among women and children. Mary, I will call her, was working in a tea estate, and she had her baby on her back. When I asked how old her baby was, I was very surprised. Her son was the age of my child, but half the size of my baby. We chatted briefly about her job, and surrounded by tea leaves, I remember one thing she said. She picked the tea, but she didn't know how it tasted like. She said she packed it off and it went to the factory, and that was that. Later that day, we collected the women together to talk about nutrition. I asked again how often they eat meat. There was a ripple of laughter in the group, and they all said, Noel, Christmas Day. We also talked about the money they earned from their work. Fortunately, these women had formed a cooperative. They were saving money. I was positive we could buy food, right? So I asked them, if you had an extra $1, what would you use it for? Can you guess? I was very surprised. They all said, a new pair of shoes. You see, when you wake up at 4 in the morning to make the trip to a factory or a farm, a new pair of shoes would make the trip more comfortable. This told me that nutrition had taken a back seat in this community, like many other communities in Africa. Faced with more pressing needs, nutrition is not a priority. As long as they have some kind of food, in Kenya it's maize meal or cassava, that is enough. The nutrition evidence we collected later that day backed my suspicions. In this population, anemia was prevalent. The extra money they got from the Christmas bonuses, they bought soda and bread, tasty food, nice to eat, but that would lead to new problems, obesity, a new form of malnutrition. Yet, it is people like Mary who need nutrition care and attention more than ever. It is women like her who have children who are stunted, affecting their growth, their ability to achieve in school and in their livelihoods. So if you ask me what I would like to change, it is this. In the future, and the future is now, Mary would be able to purchase at an affordable price and nearby to her home a diverse array of fruits, vegetables, dairy, eggs, meat. She will be aware of the choices she's making to nourish her family. Is it Mary's fault that she's not able to do this now? Traditionally, as a nutritionist, I have come to view nutrition as a household or community responsibility. But where are the shops stocking the nutritionally dense foods that I'm asking this community to buy? The world is changing. Although we see problems at the community level, we need a regional response. A response that fundamentally will change the way our food system works. A response that will improve our food system. That is why at Ciat, we have begun the discussion about a nutrition early warning system on news. You see, nutrition indicators are not tracked across countries. Different organizations use different methods of tracking. But as nutritionists and stakeholders in nutrition, we must come together. We have to be on the same page when we're reading nutrition data. If we're able to respond to the food crisis and other crises that we're facing now before they strike, we have to be well briefed. So our new system will gather, track, and crunch information that will help those in food and nutrition security to act together. It will give us information on things that are relevant to us and our communities. Crop failure, low rainfall, drought, food shortages, way ahead of time. It will trigger policy responses and options for a united and regional response that can help us, once and for all, address malnutrition. We can't leave this all to Mary and people like her. To build resilience at the household level, we need a regional response. We in nutrition and agriculture need to start viewing Mary as a person, not a statistic. Someone who needs a tractor, a hospital, financial credit, creche for her children. Building resilience means making families better equipped to deal with every challenge. We need to make sure that farmers like Mary and the communities she lives in have better access to more nutritious and affordable foods in their neighborhood. In the future, and the future is now, Mary should be able to have an income from picking tea. She will know how it tastes like. She will use her income to diversify the diet of her family. She should be able to walk into her kitchen garden and see a fruit tree, leafy vegetables, a dairy cow for milk, and a few chickens for meat. For Mary and communities like hers, we need a few more Christmas days. Are you in? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mercy. I see that in the era of fake news, you have now led me to believe that news means nutrition early warning system. I'm appalled, but I'll let you off with it. So it's always interesting to have a layman's perspective from a presentation such as that. I take away, in very Mickey Mouse terms, that it doesn't so much matter just what you eat, but what's in it and what it does for your body. And I don't know whether in our discussion we'll be able to link everybody on our panel to address what Mercy has brought to the table. But I'd like perhaps to begin with Agra, if only because it has a continental perspective, and then go to Kenya, and not encourage you just to have another 5 minutes of speechifying and presentations, but to get a dialogue between you. That would be the ideal to what Mercy has said. And perhaps we heard your farmer was called Mary?
Mary.
Yes, we have a real-life farmer in the presence of Rachel. So once you've come out with all the theory and philosophizing, perhaps we might ask Rachel about her experience on the ground. And Olu, you're the money man. African Development Bank, I was hoping you'd give me a loan by the end of the day. I want to know if you're going to, and others are going to supply money to make this dream come true. And do permit me, if I don't follow your train of thought, as a journalist by profession, just to cut you and say, go back on that. I don't understand. Why are you saying that? So, Agra first, if you would.
So, Agnes first, right? You meant.
Yes. Agra, Agnes of Agra.
Okay.
Sounds like Joan of Arc. Okay.
Thank you. Since I have the microphone, I just wanted to step back a little bit and tell you a story. Say thank you to Ciat. My first job ever was with IITA. And in IITA, we were hosted by Ciat in Uganda for as long as I know. I guess at some stage we moved away from Ciat, but Charles Wortman, Roger, Robin Bruchara here, I also as my bosses. So I really appreciate the work you are able to do, or you've been doing in Uganda, and the partnership that is happening between the CG centers, because that was a true brotherhood that allowed IITA to establish itself and get a lot of us going. I was trained under IITA, so I really appreciate the work you've done. Before I go to my personal experiences with Ciat and what you've done on the ground, especially in Rwanda. So let's talk about the work, what you just presented. I think, for me, what bothers me is that just like you, I'm here because I think it's unacceptable to live with the kind of situations we live with in Africa, to see where you ask a child who you think is 7 years old and they tell you they are 15. And when you think about it, according to the World Program, actually I saw this for the first time dealing with World Food Program, where they actually showed me the size of the brain of a child who has had malnutrition, and the fact that they're actually half the size of a normal brain. And you ask yourself, so really, how do we help be part of fixing that problem? So I really think that there are a number of things we need to be doing. And I will, before I go to what we do in Agra, I just tell you a very practical example. In Rwanda, what we did was to recognize that no single institution was going to be able to move the problem, that a number of institutions needed to come together, work together, addressing health issues as well as addressing education issues as well as addressing nutrition. You need to understand that when communities are struggling to become food secure, the first stop is calories. So communities get to calories much faster. I don't know why. Maybe they are easier. We have figured out to do calories faster. They struggle with the proteins. And they struggle even harder with lipids, depending on what type of communities we are talking about. So we really need to think about the best way to fix the protein problem. The way I see it in Agra is we are not going to try to do what Ciat does. We are not going to try to do what other institutions here that have figured it out in nutrition do. What we'd like to do is to work with you to think through how the K20 bean that I first knew, the only bean I first knew a name of was K20, which in Uganda, which was then very popular because it had significant market value. How do we produce a bean that has significant market value while it's, so that our seed companies can take it to the farmers while it has the right nutritional value? the colta bean. If you work in Rwanda, then you know colta. The colta bean, which Rwandans grow, not because they eat, but it has significant income value, right? How do we make sure that we actually get these things, not just with farmers, but with farmers because someone is packaging them the right way because they see the value in that. So in Rwanda, we worked with Ciat on iron fortified beans. That really did demonstrate that there was real value in iron fortified beans. After that, we took it upon ourselves to package this and carry it to communities across the country so that different communities can have access to these things. So again, for me, what we can do as AGRA, working with all of you, is how we use our network. We have a huge network of people we work with from a private sector perspective, but also from local NGO perspective that we work with. But also now we are really emphasizing how we work with governments to take some of the things we do to scale. So we can use those networks to take the stuff and the material you have to scale. We can definitely make this a big deal for our communities so that what you're contributing at least gets to that table.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Gladys, would you like to? Again, if I may, for the purposes of our discussion, I think we don't want to urge everybody to come with a soundbite worthy of a clap. So if you would reserve your congratulations to us till the end and just follow the conversation, I'd be much obliged. So, Gladys, you were saying?
Yeah. That presentation actually also makes me think about myself. And when she touches on tea, that is what my parents grew to pay for my school fees. But what happened is that all the land was taken up by the tea, because the tea would bring money. The money could buy me shoes and pay my school fees. But my parents didn't know that it's not the shoes I need, it's not the education I need, that is the brain that I need to be able to perform well in school. It may not be me. That is the kind of life a child who misses good nutrition goes through. The parents may have money, but they may end up not giving the child what they need. So in Kenya, we have the double burden of malnutrition. We've seen that there is a big problem of stunting. When she talks of a child being smaller, Mary's child is smaller than her child, it's because that child is stunted. Stunting means the child is not growing well, the brain is small, and that is a disaster. So what is happening is, in Kenya, we have malnutrition in the areas that we didn't think there is malnutrition. The stunting we are talking about. Kenyans will always think about the children who are suffering right now because they have no food at all. But let me tell you, the studies have shown, the Kenya Demographical Survey showed us that the children of Northeastern, they live on milk, they are breastfeeding, they are not stunted. They are only wasted. They are at a risk of death when there is no food. But those children who are in the rich areas in this country are stunted because the parents have not chosen the right food for them. That is now when we start thinking, where is the problem? I've worked for 20 years in this country, working down at the community. It happens to be that Gatanga, where she comes from, is where I used to work many years back. And I didn't think that there are other people who had a solution to the problem I was dealing with. I always thought I have the solution. And my solution was just telling the mother, feed well when the child is already malnourished. Now I've come to a national level My work is to develop policies and guidelines and build capacity. And I've realized that we cannot do it alone. That is why when we hear that Ciat is coming on board and is dealing with issues of fortifying the bins, dealing with the issues of making sure the communities understand what the problem is, and bringing together other stakeholders, then I see that in future, if we implement the Kenya Food Security and Nutrition Policy that has brought all these people together, then we may be able to reach the Mary. And Mary will be able to know what food she should have at her kitchen garden, how to prepare them, how much to feed the baby, and how frequently, so that these children's brains can grow. But again, we must take care of the woman who is pregnant, because at that time, what happens is irreversible. If the child does not have the nutrients required, if folic acid is missing, the child is born with a disability that we may never deal with. So the many issues about nutrition, if we can all come together and think of the Mary. Thank you.
Right. If I could encourage us all to make our intervention slightly shorter. But Gladys, I'm perturbed in the sense that people don't know what they should be doing, and you're not talking about a government sensitization program just educating them on the need to eat properly. Are you saying that in your 20 years in the field, you are waiting for Ciat to tell people what they should be eating? It seems a bit long in the tooth.
No. We tried to create awareness. We work under Ministry of Health. So what happens, we talk to the women when they come to the clinic. That we are doing, and we are really scaling up in this country. But we were missing the link with agriculture, with social protection, with education, which now we want to start thinking about. That's why I'm saying it's something we didn't think about that time, that now we should scale up, because...
Right. Olu, I know from having interviewed other people that the African Development Bank has agriculture as a primary word, a priority word in its agenda. Can you explain where a bank such as yours comes into this discussion? Because I see in your title you've got fragile state, so I see what happens to those parts of Kenya, parts of Africa, Darfur, Somalia. What does the bank do for them?
Thank you.
In other words, what can the bank do for the poorest of the poor?
More like what has the bank been doing, not what we can do. I think we've been doing. It's a question of what can we scale up.
Exactly.
And what kind of right partnership do we need? And I think this is the conversation we're having here today. First, let me say, this feels like a family meeting in a way. Number one, I'm a product of the CGI Center myself. Some 10 years ago, I used to work for C4. I see my former boss here, Bruce Campbell, and Lou Virtual. Well, the president of my bank as a former staff of AGRA, and also an alumnus of the CG centers as well. And I think almost everybody in here, if I've never read your paper before, I've most of come across your speeches and all that. Now, the good thing about that is that we all have, I think, a common sense of what the problem is. And if you look at Mercy's presentation, I took 2 points out of the presentation. Number one, the scale, the question of scale, and number two, the question of linkages. And I think you did that by also talking about the response to your question. I think number one, we need to understand, we need to share consensus about the scale of the problem we're talking about. I mean, we work in African Development Bank. I'd like to announce to you that this time last week, we had our annual meeting in India, and this same conversation was going on at a very high level about the role of nutrition in the development agenda for Africa. First, I'd like to say that when you look at some of the data out there, like number one, 58 million Africans at the moment are stunted. And you have to say, well, so what? Now, a stunted person today ultimately is a stunted economy tomorrow. And we need to create that linkage around the nutrition of a person to the long-term and the broader issue of development and economy of a country or a continent at large. And then when you also think of the fact that in 2030, that's 13 years from now, almost 200 million Africans will be below the age of 5. 200 million people will be below the age of 5 in 13 years' time. And now the question is, you don't meet certain nutritional needs and the dietary needs of them. We've talked about small brain, we've talked about, height and other, but that is the future of the continent. So nutrition for us has become a development agenda. For too long a time, it was a question of nutrition under the Ministry of Health of most countries. I think we need to scale up that conceptualization to a development issue. That's the first part. The second part as well is the linkage as well to issues of food security, agriculture, but also to infrastructure development. And I think the partnership that the bank is very much interested in with Ciat and all the CG Center is to look into a situation where we can manage both the production systems and the consumption system and create that kind of linkages where you can produce in one country and sell in another country. It's possible for you to produce due to your environmental endowment and resources. So the development component for the bank is to look into, in the short term, how can you respond to some of the humanitarian issues we're having. And I'd like to report that just recently, our board approved a program we call Say No to Farming in Africa, and looking at 5 countries, South Sudan, Somalia, Kenya, Uganda, and Nigeria. And this is a program of $1.1 billion, and looking into what are the short-term interventions that you can do, as well as the medium term, as well as issues of risk capacity, response to climate change adaptation programs. But this is still nothing. I think other organizations, the World Bank, the bilaterals are also investing heavily into that. The partnership that we were looking forward to, and using the bank's convening power, is a new partnership for resilience. What do we need to do differently? Drought will always happen, but they don't know how to leave behind the scale of crisis we're beginning to experience. So what investment do we need to do in early warning system, and how do we translate them into policies and programs through the support of development partners as well, and also pushing forward new leadership in that space. So it's a whole wide range of issues that you're looking at, but the ability to be able to segment them into what do we do in the short term, and what do you do in the medium to long term. And I think that's the approach to nutrition. But finally, again, for the bank, nutrition is now a development agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to talk to my sister Rachel, and she is on the ground as a farmer. And having heard what you've heard, my question to her in my faultless Kiswahili is going to be, how, Rachel, have you benefited from a collaboration with Ciat? Mwenzangu nakuuliza, unaweza kutueleza sisi hapa, wewe binafsi umefaidika kwa njia gani na usaidizi wa Ciat?
Mimi Rachel Njeri.
Sorry. Olu, just press it to green. There, it's working.
My name is Rachel Njeri.
Suliagana, yeah. She's beginning to speak in tongues. Okay.
Tunaanza na Ciat kama miaka miwili. Tunaendelea na hao kilimo huko kwa nyumbani kwa shamba, na nimefaidika na hiyo shamba na kilimo ya mboga, maize, beans, pineapples, na lima kwangu.
So we have we've worked together with Ciat for the last 2 years, and in that time they have urged you to grow certain vegetables which you've named and crops in English.
Yes.
But I'd like to ask why the growing of these crops helped you as a farmer. Kwani haukuwa ukipanda mboga kama mahindi na kadhalika kabla ya Ciat kukusaidia? Nilikusaidia kwa namna gani?
Nilikuwa napanda, lakini haikukua ikikua vizuri, sababu Mvua ilikuwa inanyesha, inabeba mbolea yote, inapeleka kwa mto.
So indeed I was engaged in this kind of agriculture before, but I lost many of my crops to what I think will simplify saying erosion, because they were simply carried away by the waters, and I lost many of them, I would say. Sasa, so what did Ciat encourage you to do so as to be a better farmer? Yani, ujiendeleshe kwa njia namna fulani.
Wakati wakakuja wakanisaidia na kukata mitalo.
So when they came, they encouraged me to dig some furrows.
Na wakati nikata mitalo, sasa ilikuwa inazuia hiyo maji, ilikuwa inabeba mbolea.
So this was a sort of antidote to water being that carried away the fertilizer that I was using.
Niko na my friends Jane, rafiki, walikuwa wananisaidia sana, wananiuliza maswali, ni kitu gani naweza kupanda isuie hiyo mnyonyoko ya udongo.
So in other words, with a friend whom I made, Jane was her name, we discussed what I should plant, which would be user-friendly for fighting against erosion.
Kwa hivyo sasa wakati nilikata hiyo mitaro, naona usaidizi ya hiyo mitaro, hizi chakula nikipanda inakuwa vizuri, ziko green, niko na majani ya ng'ombe.
So I have a better yield, I have forage for my animals. Na ningekuuliza cha mwisho, jamii yako imefaidika, wewe umefaidika, sasa nyinyi kama jamii umefaidikaje na hii?
Tumefaidika kwa sababu tangu
I'm asking what the benefits are to her, her family for this improved agricultural practice. How has the family benefited?
Tumefaidika na familia yangu sababu tuendangi soko kununua chakula.
So we don't have to go to the market to buy our food because we are food sufficient.
Na tunakula na zingine tunauza.
And not only is it enough to feed us as a family, but we also have some left over for sale.
Niko na cows.
I have cows,
Nakamua
rare species, ng'ombe. Good. I think so. I think what Rachel is saying is that improved practice leads to improved quality of life, and that Ciat and the collaboration with Ciat has been instrumental in bringing about a change, not only in her lifestyle, but the general quality of her life, and addressing something that you brought together. Now, I'm looking at my watch, it's 12:05, we should have stopped, but I cannot stop before keeping my promises to encourage a few people to either comment on what they've heard or ask a question. So I think we, sharp, not a lecture, but a question, which at school I was told is always a statement that ends with a question mark and a high-pitched voice.
So my question is to Rachel. What's your next step, your greatest challenge to improve your agriculture?
Sasa ukisonga mbele ni nini na kukula kichwa kidogo sasa?
Hakuna kitu kitanikula, nafaidika.
Oh, she seems to have no problems at all. Maybe I asked that question wrongly. Hakuna njia fulani ambao ungetaka kuongezwa na usaidizi?
Naweza kuongezwa kwa sababu shamba yangu imeinama sana na kuna mahali huko chini kuna katika na mnyonyoko inaenda.
Right, so my particular challenge, and I would ask for help and advice on that, is that part of my farm has a very steep incline, a very steep gradation, and I continue to lose crops and things owing to erosion which I have no solution against. And in fact, Rachel said to me that she was promised that if she came here, somebody would take up that conversation with her today. So, yes, another question, please. Oh, dear. Let's stick to the plan, short and nasty.
My question is to our nutritionist from Ciat, forgotten the name, Messi. Yeah. How does Ciat take account of all the nutrition attributes from across the various...
Can you hear the question? The mic's working. Can you hear the question? Okay, sorry.
Okay. How does Ciat take account of the nutrition contributions which come across the various projects that Ciat is involved in? In other words, I'm not talking about your program as the Ciat nutrition program, but I do know there are various projects in Ciat that also have elements of nutrition. How are we able to aggregate the Ciat contribution towards meeting nutrition targets? I would appreciate some advice on that.
Mercy, please answer that when you have the final word, dear.
Okay.
Please answer that later. Now, hands are popping up all the time. There's a party trick for this one, and we should have thought about it as organizers, is that we could have parked all our questions on some kind of board. But let's hear them.
Thank you very much. Goretti from Nutri Limited. We produce nutrient-enhanced food and partnering with Ciat now on a project. My question is to Somarin. It's interesting that ADB is now taking nutrition as a development issue, and that's quite good. But from everything that has been said, clearly we are doing quite a lot on the supply side of nutrition. The consumption side of nutrition is focused mainly on areas where the people are vulnerable. And clearly we've heard that even those that are not vulnerable are suffering from malnutrition. Now, from my standpoint, as a company that is producing nutrient-enhanced food, we realize that the uptake is quite minimal. And just as you have private-public partnership in the supply and everything else, we cannot leave education just to the government. We as producers would like to be able to do that, but we hardly get any support, especially from banks and anybody else. You can't go to get a loan, for instance, for education. What are we doing about that? Because scale up is very important. We have 13 years, as we are told. How are we going to scale up to see that we have nutrition, good nutrition, in the city center and at the same time to the people who are vulnerable? Are you supporting us?
I think the answer to that question is not yet.
I have a mic in my hand. Does that also give me the power to ask a question?
Yes. Who's that? Oh dear. It's a ghost of Christmas past. Okay.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. Although you haven't yet given it to me, but I'll take it. Thank you. My name is Rafiq. I work for Ciat. I'm a scientist at Ciat. People like Rachel also call me Rafiki, which means friend in Swahili. It's a good name to have. I just wanted to add a little piece of the story to Rachel's farm. I was at Rachel's farm 2 weeks ago, and we were looking at the surrounding area. All her neighbors still plant tea, but Rachel made the move. It's a very courageous move to replace the tea with other more high-value crops. And what is interesting about Rachel's story that we haven't really been able to tell yet in our celebration is that the research that we've been doing on Rachel's farm has basically led to the Nairobi Water Fund being established by the Nature Conservancy. Ciat has a seat on the board of directors. This is a $10 million gift from the Global Environment Facility to restore the entire watershed that provides water to the city of Nairobi and the energy to Kenya. And it's because of people like Rachel who have allowed us to do research on her farm, to collect data on soil erosion, to figure out what are the right technologies, which is why we've been able to basically scale it up. So this goes to the question of the point that the gentleman from the ADB made. So I wanted to just highlight this tiny little extra story that basically shows how we're working with partners to really scale up, partners such as the Nature Conservancy, to basically get more money to bring the success to scale for Kenya. Thank you.
Thank you. I think just to be fair, I have to take a question from that side, and this is the last one, I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Yemi Akimbamijo, Executive Director of FARA, and very short question. The concept of protein energy malnutrition has been in the works for decades, and as an animal scientist myself, I worked in this domain for a long time. Now, today we're talking about nutrition in humans, but it seems to me as if we are adopting a reactive approach, and it's gladdening to hear from my brother Funsho Shomori on the African Development Bank's initiative of spending another $1 billion, but that is a reactive approach. What I think is missing is how can we, and we now means just everybody, including the partners, take an approach that kind of takes us back to the future and kind of work out how to deter this whole cycle of malnutrition and build a resilient future in which perhaps in the next 20, 30 years we wouldn't be talking about malnutrition in the society. Thank you.
I'll take that as a comment, and that will be the last one. We're going back to Mercy, who started us off. Perhaps you could finish us off and respond to the question that was put to you.
Thank you very much. I have taken a point from each of our guests.
Very quickly, please.
I start with Rachel. What I learned from her is that we have to put our beneficiaries first. Ciat is very good at problem diagnosis, and that's why, although, as Ravik said, the interventions on her firm are soil interventions, you can see the impact is on nutrition outcomes in her household. Gladys from the government, it's very encouraging to hear about the political will and clarity. We need political leadership to be able to address malnutrition in Africa. Agnes from Agra, I love what she said about aligning around a single agenda. Our partnerships have to engage our networks that effect change. We need change in malnutrition. For the bank, as Fonsu said, there's a lot that needs to be done. We need to enhance the pace of change. As he said, we have to accelerate. We have 13 years. We have models. We need models that can be able to scale in Africa. And to just answer the question that was put to me, in Ciat, we're now mainstreaming nutrition into all our programs. So nutrition is becoming a pillar, and you'll see it more and more as we see impact in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. Olu, could you perhaps give a less flippant answer to the one that was put to you about education and money for education? What would you say in a sort of official soundbite?
Thank you. Well, first, I think people also will probably need to communicate more from our side how we will operate as a bank. I think most of our engagements are with governments, even though we tend to encourage them to work with private sector and civil society organizations. I'll give you an example of what we're doing in Kenya. At the moment, we're talking with KEPSA, the Alliance of Private Sector, and along with Red Cross as well. We actually said, there's an opportunity for us to respond to some of the challenges, the education, access to finance. And we say, if you can raise 1 shilling internally, we'll match it by another shilling. Grant, not loans. And to be able, and we will give this to like a third party, not managed by the bank, and the people like you can have access to. So I think there's that sense of that public-private partnership that is quite important. The question, can you have access to loans? There's a technical answer, there's a political answer to that. Technical answer is yes, the political answer is no. Because, we can walk through an intermediary. We give out loans to some organizations that you can partner with to get access to those loans. Thank you.
You're dying to say something.
I just wanted to say that to react to the question, the point that Yemi made. First of all, let's recognize that the last 15 to 20 years of MDGs did do something really great. We did actually in a few countries have hunger and malnutrition. So there's something to build on right there. It happened in Ghana, in parts of Ethiopia, in Rwanda, in a number of countries. We do have that to show, and we need to build on that. Secondly, leadership and leadership and leadership is very critical. These things need, scale needs leadership. Last year, President Kikwete told us that when he was president and his mother had goiter, he didn't know that that was because of lack of iodine. When he was told that it was because of lack of iodine, he made it a national policy that every person consumes iodine through iodination of salt. So please do not underestimate the role of leadership. If we can get these things as much as possible to the tables of the people who can scale, we can actually get to do a lot faster.
Thank you. Time for us to thank our panel. And to shoo them off gently. We're now working resolutely and relentlessly towards 1300 hours with the rubric 4 surprising ways to build resilience. Pitches by Ciat staff, followed by a discussion facilitated by me. However, we're going to tweak that particular instruction. I'm going to give each speaker a certain amount of time, and the question to involve you will come from you. So I'm deleting myself from the equation. If you don't have a question, we move on. So it won't be the same. It'll be slightly different. So we have 4 pictures, and I think we could just go in the order in which they're listed on the program, by starting with Mr. Eliud Birachi, Markets and Agricultural Value Chain Development Specialist. Eliud. So don't feel badly, Eliud, if people are just content with your pitch and have no questions for you. But I think 1 question minimum, 2 maximum might do for each picture. So there you go.
Good afternoon. We are happy to have you at this moment, and I'm glad to share with you a brief pictorial. This picture is about roses. What can we learn from roses? Not just on Valentine's Day, but every day. Personally, I didn't plan to, while in secondary school or high school, I didn't plan to do anything to do with economics or business, but I usually found agriculture to be the easier subject. And that's why I decided to go for at least an agricultural course in the university. I tried commerce, but it didn't look so interesting in the high school. So the only reason I picked this area of study or in agricultural sciences was because it was the easier subject. But when it came to going to the university, I didn't select the course that I was given. Actually, it was new. It was the first in the country, and it was in agribusiness management. So that was the first time the course was being offered. But when I got there, I didn't mind it. It looks, I was curious enough. It looked interesting. And the idea of combining agriculture, economics, and business, real-life business issues really was quite fascinating. At some point during my internship, I did it at one of the stores or shops, the Kenya Farmers Association in the North Rift of Kenya. During the internship, we would go around the businesses, and one of those was actually being on the shop counter selling the products of this organization. And the products are simply the farm inputs, equipment, tools, seeds, chemicals. But what struck me many of the time is that we had to turn out many of the customers who are actually farmers. The business, the shop, never had the items that the farmers usually required. And that really got me thinking, why don't they stock these? Why don't they know what these customers really want? At some point later on, I had a chance to also interact in the Netherlands. And during the stay in the Netherlands, I managed to track the cut flour supply chain. I think all of you are familiar that Holland is the largest distributor of flours, but it does not produce much of those. These flours come from across the globe. And following this trail of the flours, I came to realize that the focus on the flours is actually on very few types of varieties. The rose flour, for example, one would be supplying only maybe one called, let's say, the old garden roses, hybrid musk, but it is very specific in terms of color, in terms of size, in terms of even weight. This is very specific, and this is what every farmer was trying to produce. And they would produce it exactly as the buyers would like it to be. Despite all the logistics needed, these flowers were available at the right time, at the right price, and of course, at the right place. Now, I started reflecting back on our farmers back home. What I noted is that most of our farmers do not specifically plant one crop or one variety. Some of them would plant about 10. If I give an example of maybe some cereals or even the beans or legumes, they would have like 6, 7 of them. The reason they're doing this is they're not sure. It is a kind of insurance. Of course, diversity is good. This is a kind of insurance for them. They don't know which one will grow. Sometimes they throw, for example, some crops like beans or legumes into maize plantation. It's not really planting. You just throw in and hope that some of them will yield. So we're talking about very good varieties of these crops, which our scientists, our breeders have actually been able to generate. But one thing that possibly we've not been able to do is to follow up on these specific varieties to ensure that these producers are well equipped. They need to be equipped with the right skills to be able to produce those varieties for yields. They need to be linked up to the respective buyers. They need to know whom they are producing for. And that is one of the weakest points that we are having. So the reason why we are not able to create an impact is that we have not been able to help our farmers to target their production for money. I think one of the experiences we just had this morning is that the farmer has the money at the back of their mind. Even if it's highly nutritious, there is the economic motive. So we need to be able to help farmers get the most for their money. We need to work with the private sector to make sure that markets are ready, farmers are briefed about what to supply, and then help farmers with production techniques. We are talking about climate smart production practices. These practices are not really with the farmers. So if we are really serious about improving food security, we need to improve our trade supply chains, just like the case of the rose flowers. And these trade supply chains, the ones we are referring to as the commodity corridors, to make sure that we can deliver better, more nutritious food to consumers when they need it, where they need it, and at an affordable price. And we need to do this, not just on one day, just like the Valentine's Day, but we need to do this on daily basis. And that is the challenge that we have to work on, and we are working towards that. Thank you.
A question for Eliud?
Yes, indeed. There is, let me dash to you.
My name is Joab. I work for a company called Lasting Solutions. We are agribusiness processing. I think there's one thing that Elliot has mentioned there that still worries me. We are saying that a farmer today is still planting 6 varieties as an insurance. Why? A farmer is like any other business person. They should be able to say, if I do this, I plant this, this is the output. If we have not gotten to a stage whereby we can give the farmer those, then we are the failure. Because in business, it's about standardization. You standardize everything. This is what you're selling. So why is it that we are at that stage? Why is a farmer still talking about an insurance by planting 6 varieties?
Another question? I wonder whether somebody from the high table, as it were, not necessarily Elliot, would address that question. Debisi, I pick on you.
It is an interesting question. Thank you, Joab. Good to see you here. Now, farmers are planting, well, there are different reasons. So one of them is de-risking their investments, again. Markets are not very strong right now. So a farmer doesn't have, the signals aren't yet strong enough from the market for the farmer to understand or to know what the requirements are. So a farmer plants multiple varieties, some specifically for feeding at home, others for segmented market. Now, as Eliud has alluded to using the example of the roses, you know, the reason why we have a vibrant market for roses in East Africa, Ethiopia and Kenya, is really because of market signals. You know, you want to strengthen those signals, and using the food hub system, you know, it sort of amplifies the signal. So you get a stronger signal from the market to the producer through the distribution hub. So you want to improve that. So we are making progress. I think, you know, the work that we're doing, working with smallholder farmers and farmers cooperatives through the PABRA network, and it's the sort of network, as I alluded to in my speech earlier in the day, is what we want to expand to other commodities. We want to connect every single production hub with strong consumer hubs. So the signals are still weak, Joab. So as we strengthen those signals, you will find that producers respond more to the markets.
A round of applause for Eliud, please. We have to stop there. Thank you. May I invite picture number 2, and I think the name I should be coming out with is Caroline. Caroline Mwangera.
Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to beg your pardon because I didn't realize that my colleagues coming before me were going to give personal stories. I'll also start with a personal story, but really that really emphasizes our passion. Why do we work on what we do? It's really driven by passion. And I want to say and start with a story for me in 1984. I was still a very young girl, and I was growing up in the highlands of Kenya, not very far from here. It's a very beautiful place. Lush green, plenty of banana trees, valleys, hills. And we grow a lot of crops where I come from. It's a beautiful place. And I remember very clearly that's the same year that I became aware of drought. And every day through that season, we had tens of people coming through our farm. And they were begging for food, and they were begging for employment. And I remember one thing that was very shocking and very heartbreaking for me was to see how frail, how weak those people were. It was the first time I really realized there's something like droughts and the effects it has on people. So I look at the images we see today. You've seen the images we have from East Africa, from the Horn of Africa this year. And I ask myself, it's 30 years later. Is this the future that we have? Is it what we have to live with? Does it mean that drought is uncontainable? And that's what I ask myself every day. Does it mean that we are stuck? Is this what we have to contend with every day, especially in the Horn of Africa? And I feel that for me as a climate specialist, there's hope. Drought is not uncontainable. Our work already looking at climate data and tracking climate information helps us to know in advance, even more than 1 year in advance, we're able to know about a crisis that's going to come because of climate. We know about depressed rains. We know that we're going to have a drought. But why are we not using that information now? That's what I keep asking myself. Why is it that every day you're hearing that hundreds of thousands or millions of people are still dying of hunger in Africa? And this is what we keep asking and thinking about for us who are working on climate in Ciat. And I remember very well in 2014 when I joined Ciat, and I started working in northern Uganda. And we visited the Acholi sub-region, which was struck by over 2 decades of civil war. And we drove in one of the districts in a place called Ajumani, which is very close to the border with South Sudan. And you saw lines of refugees because there was conflict in South Sudan. These people came to Uganda, to northern Uganda specifically, not only to run away from the conflict in their country, but also to seek food. And I imagine that these people, probably farmers themselves, in these turbulent times cannot be able to grow food for themselves. So they are faced in a situation where they have to depend on someone for food. And then that's a realization that if we have to address the problems that we have today in terms of hunger, we need to really realize that sometimes you don't have to you're not able to produce even what you need to produce. I look at my grandmother, who is still living in Eastern Kenya. She mainly fends for her household. If she can produce enough for the family, she's okay. But what about people in northern Uganda who not only have to produce for their households, but are also the lifeline of a community in crisis, in this case in South Sudan? So this realization also came home when later in the week we visited a man called Owor with some of the colleagues from the agricultural extension staff from northern Uganda and with some staff from University of Gulu. And Stephen was doing very well for himself. He was in his mid-30s. We sat there with him and his wife, and he described his farm just like what we do really when we work with communities. We want to understand what are you really grappling with in terms of agriculture challenges, how can we solve the problems? How can we work with you for solutions? And he was doing well for himself, and he was producing a lot of maize and a lot of cassava, on his farm. And then he explained that, a new opportunity had sprung up for himself and his fellow colleagues, the farmers in the region, because the aid agencies, the markets, were demanding maize and cassava that were taken to South Sudan because there was crisis in the region. And then I asked myself, of course farmers will react to produce what is being demanded by the market. Why maize? Why cassava? Why are we not producing, for example, for South Sudan, leafy vegetables? Why not milk? Why not eggs? Why not millets? So why are we not providing a more diverse food for these communities in crisis? And so this situation tells us 3 things. One is that farmers react, and as my colleague Eliud has correctly said, they have an economic incentive. If a farmer knows what is needed, what he needs to produce, the price is going to be paid for what he's producing, and where the market is for that produce, he is going to produce. So what we are trying to say is, like my colleagues have said before, and Mercy said rightly, and Agnes also said before, is that if we are really creating a demand of not only the calorie-dense foods, but a more diverse food, then the farmers, if they know where the markets are, the prices they get for that, they are willing to produce. And a second thing that we realize is that we now cannot just focus on production. We have been focusing on issues related to production at community scale, at country scale, but now we have to think at a regional scale. We have situations where we know farmers in certain communities are the lifeline of communities in need. And for us, we know that we need to link, especially in regions where you can increase production, link those areas to the areas that they can supply which are in need. So it would be better for us if we are boosting productivity for those regions, because then we can find ways of supplying that food when it's needed in the communities that have crisis. We don't only want to provide for farmers like Stephen and his colleagues information such as on market information, but we also want to let him know where particular crops will grow best. What are the best climate smart technologies that he needs to apply on his farm? How can we provide climate information in advance so that he can prepare for the challenges ahead of him in the season? Can we identify what are the best adaptation measures that he needs to use? And what are the best agricultural practices that not only enhance productivity, but will also increase the adaptation and the resilience at this farm? If we can help these farmers boost production of their crops that are integral to a diverse diets, not only for themselves, but for the areas in crisis, then they can maximize profits and at the same time supply the market with a more varied basket of food commodities. It would be, like I said...
May I ask you to come to a close?
So using the climate tools and data we have available today, it is not impossible. We'll not only boost production, resilience, and adaptation, but we are going to stop seeing what we see, recurrent media headlines every day talking about the calamity facing especially the Horn of Africa. Thank you so much.
A question? 2 questions? I've omitted to mention that Caroline is a farming systems and climate change scientist. Sir.
Thank you, Caroline. I'm David Amuravi from Biovision Africa Trust. I'm very much impressed with your attention towards climate tools, and which are very important in decision making. But we also know that quite a lot is produced. But with some farmers, we end up losing almost 65% of what they produce. And soon after that, we have hunger, we have famine. To what extent is Ciat working with other partners in the area of looking at the issue of post-harvest losses, and also in the issue of unlocking the latent demand for the produce that we are trying to increase through better technologies? Thank you.
Thank you. Once again, it very much seems to me, Caroline, you can have a go, but this is a management question. Do you have an answer to that question? What is Ciat doing? Do you have an answer to that question? Sir.
I will say we're as worried as you are, but not much on research on post-harvest. Sorry to be direct, but yeah, so most of our research in the past, but my colleagues may help me, if there is a project on post-harvest, it has been on production, has been on mapping the future of climate, thinking of sustainable food systems. We see other alternative providers working quite a bit on the post-harvest losses, and we think that with the funding available, we are not tackling that one yet. But any other colleague from Ciat who has an idea, I don't know we have 300 projects ongoing, so I don't know all of them. Perhaps there is an experience on post-harvest.
Yes, there is one right here.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
My name is Fred Kizito. I'm working with Ciat based in Rwanda. I'm working on soils, water, and landscapes. And like you see, pretty much I think 80% of the room is partners here. And the way we work in a program which is USAID funded called Africa Rising, Feed the Future Initiative, we're working with partners like the IITA to bring on the post-harvest component. So they are actually right with us in the field, looking at the agronomy. And then if you're fighting for increasing productivity, then you need to ensure that that productivity is buffered against losses after post-harvest. So they teach the farmers affordable methods of storage against mites, rodents, ensuring that also they're protected from the vagaries of climate, specifically humidity and temperature, which enhance pests and diseases within storage places. So we're really working closely on this, and it's really a very good component. Maybe you may be interested that the post-harvest component also brings in a lot of private sector, like bringing in the bags that are really, they don't allow in a lot of moisture. And this is really worked out so well that farmers have increased productivity up to 30% more than they were before. Am I allowed to just ask a question to Caroline?
I'm afraid not.
Okay, all right, that's all right.
Applause for Caroline. What's happened to my magic bit of paper? We now have picture number 3 in the person of Job Kihara, a soil fertility scientist.
Thank you very much. And I also have something personal to share with you, something that most of my friends and colleagues do not know. We're talking about soil carbon. It's one of the indicators of soil fertility. Commonly, people term it as soil organic matter. They are very closely related. And yeah, my personal story to start with is true. I grew up in the slopes of the Mau forests. These are one of the main forests in Kenya, where we get a lot of resources of water, even plans to get water from there all the way to service Nairobi. This environment was very good for me. It is really natural forests with some plantation forests, and we had a good life those days. The place is called Maji Mazuri. Maji Mazuri just means clean water. That's where I come from, privileged. The name is said to have been given by railway constructors in the 1900s when they were amazed by the clean waters that were coming from these forests. And the forests were everywhere. I loved walking through them. The water was indeed crystal clear. There were tall green trees so thick that you couldn't actually get light down to the bottom. And sometimes when you walk through those forests, all you could hear the sounds of birds and other animals walking down on the mat of leaves and residues. It was great. Today, when I drive through this area, I see mostly cultivated fields. And given what I know today as a scientist, you can almost see the carbon evaporating from these particular fields. I recently went back in time and actually realized the kind of change that has taken place in this environment. Probably you can see some of those images at the back. The one that is most forested is in 1985, when I was a small boy, and that's the way it looked like. And just recently, probably just within this year, this is the way it looks like. It's a huge change that has taken place in terms of the cover, but also there is a lot of change that we can't see, but actually within the soil carbon itself. Now, as a scientist, I really see that we are losing a lot in terms of the carbon, and we need to do something if we have to maintain at least some level of ecosystem services like those that we gained from those forests those days. We actually got berries from the forest, we got nuts from the forest. There were a lot of services that we could actually obtain from these systems. And this brings me now to us as a researcher, and within my decade or so of research in soil fertility, We have engaged with a lot of scientists who are represented here, with IITA, with others from other different institutions, working on soil fertility and how we can improve the systems. We were actually looking for best management practices that can help to improve productivity but still conserve the soils. And we actually found most of these systems, conservation agriculture, integrated soil fertility management, crop rotations, intercroppings in different combinations that actually help to boost productivity. We got good results. We are promoting this. Colleagues have said of the work that we are doing in Tanzania. There's work going on in Kenya. AGRA is doing a lot promoting these technologies. Other partners also really engaged in getting this information to the farmers. There are benefits of yield improvement that we can see when we compare with the systems that are not actually managed within these best practices. So we decided we had some opportunity to conduct some long-term trials. As you know, many of the experiments that are done for 2 or 3 seasons, and then they are closed down, projects close, people don't have the resources to continue moving forward. But we have squeezed in and managed to maintain some trials for the last 15 years now. And we said with the current initiatives of increasing carbon by some percentage in the soil every year, let's see what has been happening over time. Most of the time, what we have done as scientists is to compare a poorly managed system, what we call the farmer's practice, against our best practice. And we compare them at the same time and see this particular system that is managed by scientists, researcher-based, is actually having higher carbon than the one that is farmer managed. But we said, let's not look at them at one instantaneous time, let's look at them over time and see what has been happening. So we analyzed this data over this period of about 12 years or so at 5 different measurement intervals. And to our amazement is that these systems are all losing carbon, even what we considered as the best practices. And we got surprised and wanted to know what is actually happening in these systems. We are still investigating some of those things. We realize that some of these are dependent on the type of soil that we are having. We realize that we could be increasing carbon in some other environments. We have seen some of those results, but we realize the importance of actually considering a temporal dimension in our measurements of carbon. When we measure carbon at one particular time, we may actually not be getting the full story. We may think that we are actually having increased carbon in the system that we are managing well compared to the system that we are not managing well. But all those systems may as well be losing carbon. And that calls us to actually think about investments that cause us to have a temporal aspect in reflecting or in measuring and quantifying the carbon changes. We need to also see how best we can tap into the resources available in terms of carbon credits, because even those systems that are managed well, our realization was that the best management systems are not losing as fast the carbon as the systems that are not managed well. And that is one of the benefits. It takes investment to also decrease the losses, the rates of loss of the carbon. And we need to actually get some buyer of that avoided loss that the farmers have actually achieved, because that would be carbon that would have been emitted into the atmosphere and cause greenhouse gas emissions. So,
may I ask you to come to a close?
Yes, I want to say 2 things that I think we need to consider as we move forward. We need to compare soil carbon storage or sequestration with a temporal dimension, not just comparing them as a control and a best practice. And it's also time to think about practices we are promoting and what should be done to increase their carbon storage, even as we work with what we already know. As we promote the practices that we are promoting, we also need to think what can be done to improve the systems we are working with so that they can actually also store more carbon than what we are actually achieving today. Soil is the production base. All the things that we are doing, the production, the food that we are talking about is coming from the soil. We need to promote its resilience. We need to promote its fertility so that it can continue to serve us for a longer time period. Thank you.
A question or questions? Go easy on carbon.
It's very important.
The lady. We'll take one question.
Thank you so much for your presentation. My name is Liz Kiamba. I'm with the Netherlands Embassy. I missed the part where there's a linkage between your research and business or private sector. I know you mentioned something about investment, but is there anything you're doing to link what you're doing to the private sector? Thank you.
That is a question to you.
Thank you very much, and I will lead your question to the work that we are doing also in in Tanzania. We are promoting the technologies that we already know that work best in terms of increasing productivity, and the increase in productivity requires that there is a market component associated with that. So we are linking it in terms of the productivity and how that productivity can be used in business, bringing in partners who are actually involved in the marketing of this produce. But the discussion is also to look at how we can tap into the carbon markets, which as of now we are not actually achieving.
Thank you. A round of applause for Joe. Last is Solomon Wendia, a forage agronomist. And where is Solomon? A personal request, Solomon. Would you please not start with a chapter from your memoirs?
Okay, thank you, Okumu. I'll be looking at how we can use grass to help us grow a greener future in Africa. And today, probably most of you actually took grass for breakfast. And most of you probably do so every day, but you don't realize it. But when you think of maize, rice, sugarcane, they are all grasses. And of course, grasses are also the staple food for animals, our cows. They are not only to enable them to have a basic health, but they also help them to produce nutritious milk, which we need also as part of our nutrition. In Africa, boosting milk production does not only mean more for consumers, but for smallholder farmers, it also means being able to push away the hunger and also extra coin for the household so that they can buy more household needs. This realization actually came to me when I was working for Kenya Agriculture and Livestock Organization, which the director acknowledges here. We used to have a regular field visit, and this is when we could interact with the farmers. And at that time, we knew there was a problem with the grass that is quite prevalent and common in systems we deal with, the Napier grass. There was Napier head of smut disease, and it was devastating the production of this grass across the country. And we were kind of experimenting with different kinds of grasses to see which one would be resilient and be able to withstand the problem. At one time in the field, I remember we had a sitting with the farmers, and there was a farmer by the name Mwango. He was really enthusiastic and fascinated by what we explained, but he was also disheartened to know that in his own field of Napier grass, he had the problem. So after the discussions were concluded, he was eager to get some of the material we had so that he could try under his own conditions. But we were a bit constrained at that time because we had a limited amount. But what we did, we just provided him with 3 seeds, 3 canes, if you like, or strands. And from that, you'll hear later what happened. After 2 or 3 years later, as usually do, we go back to see what has happened with the farmers. We were amazed by what we found. Mwango had managed actually to cultivate 2 acres of Napier grass just from 3 seeds. And he said that the material was not only resistant to the disease, but his animals actually liked it and produced more milk. And in fact, at that time, he had even increased his animals by 1. They usually keep around 2, but this time he was keeping 3 animals because he could produce more milk and also get more income. And by then, I already knew if you could address the feed quality, you could increase the milk production by between 15 and 40%. But this experience really sank on me, and how by just addressing the quality and also the guidance and management on forages, how you can really have a big difference on the farm level. So for David, was not only able to produce more milk, which was quality, but he could also be able to have more products for his family, and also have money to buy other foods for the family also, helping become more resilient in terms of food shortages. On the farm, because he was also a tea farmer, and his land was sloping, and it's actually around the Aberdeen ranges, he grew this napier grass right at the top. And this could stop actually the soil being carried away during rains because of its strong roots, and kept the most profitable or most important soil in place for his continued production. Today, we also know these grasses play a critical role. They can help fix carbon, like the previous presenter has just said, and also ensure that we improve the efficiency by having more or less greenhouse gas emissions per unit product of animal produce. But most importantly, for farmers like David, grasses also present an opportunity to generate income. Like around this region, during the dry seasons, we usually have the prices of fodder doubling. And if you can encourage farmers to grow grasses, they can also be able to generate money. Like a bale of grass during dry season would cost like $3, but usually during the wet season, it can only be just $1. After that community we were dealing with, we were actually able to reach more than 1,000 farmers. But how did we do it? We entered through a primary school, where we got a garden and placed some of the materials that were quite resistant, some of the ones we were working with. And the children were able to take some of the cuttings to their parents, and within no time we were able to help more farmers. So we need to spread the word and sowing of more improved forages, and that's how we can actually grow a green future in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I omitted to mention that Solomon is a forage agronomist. A question for him? One question or two? So the gentleman, there's the microphone emerging.
Thank you. My name is Max Mbunji. I work for Harvest Plus, but I definitely have interest in forages. How or what strategies are you using, seeing those benefits, especially to package the agronomic requirements for producing forages? And what sort of seed systems do you see practical in rolling out forages to the communities that need them the most, especially with the limitations of land in most of the countries? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. We know one of the biggest constraints at the moment is addressing the forage seed systems. Most of the most precious feed material or seeds come our way outside Africa, but that's not sustainable because it tends to be expensive. Currently, what we are doing is to narrow down on areas where the seed production can be happening in Africa. And at the moment, we think some of those conditions where we can be able to produce some of the materials that have been developed by Ciat could be in countries like Zambia or Malawi. And then if it's produced locally, then we should be able to lower the cost. And of course, we'll work with the partners, the NAS system, to be able to reach the farmers at the local level. And that's what we're actually doing.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to leave it there. It's lunchtime, and it's 1 minute past 1. We have a small word, very small, the way he described it.
Extremely small. I forgot to recognize 2 survivors of Ciat, which are here on the right, and many more perhaps that I haven't met. So I want to recognize Sehene Kalemo, the current Director General of ICIPE, who knows the CGR very well, and particularly she survived and thrived many years in Ciat, Colombia. Her family still speaks Spanish, and she's our landlord in Nairobi. So Sehene, we are very happy that you are here. I also want to recognize Dr. Roger Kirkby. This is a real survivor because he worked for many, many years at Ciat, Africa, as a senior in a very senior positions. He retired, and he still remembers and come back to celebrate with us Ciat 50. So Roger, it's great to see you here. Thank you. Thank you very much.
It's lunchtime, so time for our orange, green, and blue stickers. We're doing well in terms of timing, largely owed to you and your cooperation. Well done for helping me. I think we could, the way we're behaving, be back here in an hour's time at 1400 hours. There'll be yet one more session on building a more robust food system in the face of conflict and climate change. And I think that we've set a precedent now where I'll leave much of the questioning to you. You will find to your delight that many of our dishes at lunch are based on beans, which will give us an opportunity to eat what we preach. Bon appétit. Oh gosh. Lunch is on the first floor. Sorry, a great omission from me. We can walk down the stairs. Lunch is on the first floor, one down, to your right after this, to your right. One down and to your right. And please come back in about 50 minutes' time.